Chapter 899. The Cat That Mustn't Be Trifled With. So powerful? What kind of cat is it? Li Weiwei asked. She was the daughter of the left minister, so she was naturally bold, without much reverence towards Zhang Deman. She was not afraid that he would rebuke her. Sure enough, Zhang Deman just smiled and said, "I'm not sure what is so special about the cat, but its owner. Hee, that person would be our Lord Head." Would that be Lord Yen Dongqi, head of Northern Institution? Li Weiwei asked again. Zhang Deman shook his head in reply, saying, "No, it is Lord Fufu Hui." At this moment, everyone's expression was filled with awe. Even Li Weiwei was gaping slightly, revealing an expression full of reverence. Fu Hui was the head of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, not the Northern Institution. He was an elite of the heavenly body tier, but no one knew the details about his cultivation level, as this elite tended to spend most of his time cultivating in seclusion. This was precisely the reason why the four major institutions of the Scarlet Heaven Academy tended to do things their own way, giving rise to fierce competition amongst the institutions. The four main institutions also had their respective heads, known as heads of the institution, but their cultivation level was at the perfection level of the Sun-Moon tier. Within the chaotic star's majestic empire, they could be considered the top elites. However, one shouldn't look at it as if it was only a difference of one level between the Sun-Moon tier and Heavenly Body tier. The gap of this one level was extremely large. Forget about the 1-star or 2-star geniuses. Even a 5-star genius wouldn't be able to cross over and break through the barrier of such a level. Even though Li Weiwei, Ma Xing, and others were super geniuses, none of them would dare to say that they could step into the Heavenly Body tier in the future. Even reaching the Sun-Moon tier would already be extremely difficult. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that among each batch of students recruited once every 5 years, about 90% of them could step into the Mountain River tier. After all, those who were recruited were already geniuses themselves. However, only 1/10 of them could possibly reach the middle levels, while those who could attain major accomplishment would only be about 10%, and the rest that might be able to reach the level of perfection would be 1 in 1,000. At most, there would only be 1 in 10,000 who could step into the Sun-Moon tier. However, how many students were recruited each time? Therefore, it was considered quite normal not to have anyone reach the Sun-Moon tier in one or even in a few batches of students. With such a comparison, one should know just how formidable those of the Heavenly Body tier were. The white cat is the pet of Head Fu, who likes it very much. So, even if the white cat loosens its bowels on your head, you must endure it. In the past, someone had slapped the white cat. That person was then crippled by Lord Fu and expelled. Zhang Deman said solemnly. "Hey, could that be been the 7th young master of the AI clan?" Someone queried. His surname was indeed AI. He was called AI Song. Zhang Deman nodded in response. The AI clan might not be a top-ranking clan, but it is also quite high-ranking among the second-class clans. Lord Fu actually didn't even give them any face. Hiss. Never provoke the cat. Everyone gave a cold shudder. There was none who didn't think that since that cat mustn't be provoked, and giving it a slap would face such miserable consequences, then if one was to grab a handful of its fur, what kind of miserable fate would await that person? Most of the people would stay in the dormitory arranged by the academy, but a small number of people merely strolled around the academy, and would return to stay in their own homes at night. Descendants of influential officials, such as Li Weiwei, would naturally choose whether to come to the academy or not depending on their mood. Ling Han finally had his own home. The Scarlet Heaven Academy was massive. Everyone was given their own courtyard. Even though it wasn't very big, there was a garden, a living room, and a bedroom. It could be said that even though it was small, it was completely furnished with all necessities. He was very satisfied. After sitting for a while, he began to consider his next move. Making money. He had first defined a goal. Of course, it wouldn't be gold and silver, but rather the true origin stones. It was the hard currency of the immortal realm, just like the gold and silver of the small world. With money, one could buy all kinds of resources. How to make money? Ling Han stroked his chin. Subconsciously, he took out the food in the Black Tower and started cooking. A few days ago when he was staying in the left minister's residence, he remained very low-key, cultivating in seclusion, but now this place was his territory, so his mind suddenly relaxed a lot. He had spent too much time with who Nyoha would also begin thinking about food when he had nothing else to do. Alas, I wonder how Hu Nyo, my parents, Helian Sun Shui, and my son are doing right now. Hey, can the food in the Black Tower be taken out for sale? This ought to be feasible. The food in the Black Tower was so delicious that even the immortals would drool over them. After all, the immortals were only more powerful in strength, and weren't pure-minded monks with scant desires. Otherwise, why would there be so many strong people remaining in the position of power? However, which restaurant would let the bills be settled with true origin stones? And if he wanted to deliver the food straight to the households of high-ranking officials or local tycoons, he would need to have the right connections. That's right. Ling Han clasped his hands together. Isn't Li Weiwei the right connection? If the daughter of the left minister wanted to do business, then who would not give her face? Anyway, the ingredients in the Black Tower didn't need any capital, so even if the profits of the sales were to be divided equally with Li Weiwei, it wouldn't matter much. After all, the one with a connection would be king. Ling Han nodded. In addition, he could also concoct alchemical pills such as this replenishing spirit pill, which would be extremely popular amongst those of the Shattering Void tier and Mountain River tier, and it would not be bought with gold or silver, but with true origin stones. Alchemy was his old business, and he was the best at it. In his past life, there was no knowing how much he had earned from this trade. Even the proud and arrogant Sword Emperor and the Setting Sun Saber Emperor at that time also had to bow their heads to him. This was also one way of doing it. Letting Li Weiwei help in liaising with the customers was putting his life in the hands of another, after all. That kind of young miss. There was no knowing when she might change her mind. Meanwhile, concocting alchemical pills would be different. Once the pills had been refined, how could he possibly be afraid of not being able to sell them? Where was that barbecued meat that he had put on the grill? Ling Han had just released the gold-seeking rat from the Black Tower. Now that he had brought this little guy, his talent was indeed very helpful. But when he turned around, the 2 pieces of meat on the grill that were nearly roasted had gone missing. He couldn't help but be surprised. That meat was practically stolen from right under his nose without him realizing it. The other party's movement was extremely fast, and the actions were also very nimble. It was quite astonishing. However, when his eyes swept across the vicinity, he almost choked. On the wall of the courtyard, a fat white cat was seen having a hearty meal, and what its mouth was nibbling was naturally the roasted meat that Ling Han was missing. Zhang Deman's words immediately flashed through Ling Han's mind. The big white cat. Fuck, it wouldn't be such a coincidence, right? Ling Han's mouth slightly twitched. On his first day of entering the academy, he had already met the legendary white cat that couldn't be provoked. This cat is so vile to steal things the moment it appears. The big white cat also realized that it had been caught by Ling Han, but it didn't show any fear like a thief being caught in the act. Instead, it cried out meow towards Ling Han. Its voice wasn't loud, but carried the hint of a tiger cub's soft roar. It nibbled at the meat again, bearing a vile expression as if saying, "Come and bite me if you dare." Ling Han felt a sudden urge to strike it, only to remember that it wasn't without reason that the former senior brother disciple couldn't help but hit this big white cat. He snorted and said, "Little thief, I will forego this one meal. I'll consider it as my treat to you. However, don't think you can steal again." This big white cat was merely in the Shattering Void tier. Even if its body was agile and its speed was amazing, as long as Ling Han remained vigilant, he would definitely not let the other party succeed again. Meow! The white cat cried out arrogantly, which meant, if I want to eat, then could you stop me? It picked up the rest of the meat and left abruptly with a leap. Chapter 900. Fine, as long as you pay. On his first day of entering the Scarlet Heaven Academy, a fat white cat came and put on airs to establish its authority. Ling Han gave a sigh. This isn't a good start. After a good night's rest, he went to attend class the next day. On this day, a teacher would come to explain to them some secrets regarding the cultivation of the Shattering Void tier. On one hand, he had some interest in the subject, and on the other, he wanted to meet with Li Weiwei in order to discuss with her about doing business. Naturally, he wouldn't be cutting classes. He arrived neither too early nor too late. By the time that he had arrived, he saw that about 1/3 of the seats in the classroom had already been occupied. The classroom was large enough to accommodate about 500 people. This batch of newly recruited students was less than 500, so the place was sufficient to accommodate all the new students. Senior Brother Ling. Brother Ling. Ling Han. Upon seeing Ling Han, quite a lot of people came up to greet him and appeared to be exceptionally warm. Only a minority of talented individuals showed indifferent expressions, apparently not willing to fawn over Ling Han. This was something quite normal for everyone. A 4-star genius. How many were there in the entire chaotic star's majestic empire? More importantly, the assessment of the White Star Tower included up to 5-star genius, which meant that Ling Han was qualified to climb to the highest level of martial arts. Perhaps, he would be an elite of the heavenly body tier a million years later. Of course, given that a period of a million years was really long, innumerable changes could happen in between. Perhaps Ling Han would have already died by then. This was also the reason why some people held themselves to be above politics and worldly considerations. After all, at present, only Ling Han's talent had been exhibited. There was no knowing how strong he would be in actual combat. If they had known that Ling Han had been equally matched against Su Ran's spirit, then a lot of people would likely change their minds immediately. Ling Han just smiled and nodded his head in greeting towards everyone. He had always been a person who would return the kindness of others tenfold, but if the other person were to walk all over or provoke him, he would absolutely show no mercy. Humph! Shameless! The Luo brothers came as well. Naturally, they wouldn't be bothered to suck up to Ling Han. Both brothers bore fiery gazes. Who would have thought that an insignificant ant of a small world would actually seize first place in the assessment this time? Ha ha ha! Luo Ba suddenly faced upwards and let out a few howls. Whom this was directed at was obvious. Senior Brother Luo, what do you mean by this? Someone asked. Although Luo Ba was very strong, the strength of the Luo clan wasn't considered top tier within the imperial capital, so someone was naturally bold enough to argue with him. I guess all of you still have no idea this Ling Han, Senior Brother Ling, hee. It was only but a few days ago that he flew up here from a small world. Luo Ba unveiled a big secret. What? Everyone cried out in surprise. He was an insignificant ant from a small world. Suddenly, many people revealed expressions of disgust. How could they humble themselves to make the acquaintance of such a lowlife? Yet, there were also some people who expressed even more admiration. A person from a small world could actually be so amazing. It really wasn't easy. The attitudes of the students had undergone extreme polarization. This was a deeply rooted notion. Some people were of the view that a small world was too primitive and too backward, and showed extreme disdain. Ling Han. Luo Ba couldn't help but smile. He reached out and said, "Did you forget what I said yesterday? Do you dare to spar with me?" Spa? What right do you have to spar with me? Are you even qualified to spar with me? Although Ling Han wasn't a vain person, he absolutely didn't have a good impression of Luo Ba, and so wouldn't give any face to the other party. Luo Ba was so angry that he stomped his foot. He was one of the 3 great elites of the younger generation in the imperial capital. It couldn't be that he wasn't even qualified to spar with Ling Han, right? He forced down his boiling anger and said, "I want to duel with you." "Fine, pay me an appearance fee. Otherwise, there's nothing to discuss." Ling Han said, "It's not much, just give 10 true origin stones, but if I win, then you would have to compensate me another 100. Many people laughed out loud. This Senior Brother Ling was a really shrewd person, even trying to make money out of a duel. Luo Ba had wanted to agree at once, but quickly restrained himself. Although he was the leader of the younger generation of Luo clan, it was slightly difficult for him to take out 10 true origin stones in one go. The crucial point was, he might be able to take out 10 true origin stones, but what if he lost? 100 true origin stones was a very huge amount indeed, at least it was beyond his control. Ling Han's performance was quite amazing, so he had to consider the possibility of losing. At first, it wasn't a big deal. His ranking was below that of Ling Han, so no one would laugh at him even if he lost. But if he won, then he would be able to trample all over the glory surrounding Ling Han for getting first place. Yet now, with such a high stake, he dared not agree so easily. Unless he could be certain of defeating Ling Han. "Coward, do you intend to use this method to avoid a duel?" Luo Ba certainly wouldn't lose on his stand. Ling Han waved his hand dismissively, saying, "Stop talking about such trivial matters. If you want to fight, I can accept your challenge, But there's nothing to discuss if you don't have true origin stones. Do you think that my time isn't valuable like yours? Poor people without true origin stones should refrain from whining. Luo Ba was seething with so much anger that he almost agreed, but he still managed to forcibly restrain himself. He had to be 100% sure of gaining victory. Ha 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 ha. Amidst the jingle-like laughter, two beautiful women were seen coming in from the door, one clothed in green robes, tender and charming, while the other appeared elegant like a fairy in flowing white robes. Both women had their respective strengths. While their temperaments were completely different, both were charming all the same, causing others to be intoxicated with their beauty. They were Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner, two of the three great beauties of the imperial capital. Well said, Ling Han. Li Weiwei came over and showed her support for Ling Han. He is my man. She immediately realized her own mistake, and quickly corrected herself, adding, No. He is a man of the left minister's residence, and my follower. If any of you dare to bully him, then you will stand as my enemy. You had better consider the consequences. Although there was no shortage of descendants of influential officials in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, was there anyone whose status was higher than that of the daughter of the left minister, at least in this batch? Those who had felt disdain for Ling Han earlier humphed. Although they didn't dare to confront Li Weiwei, they also certainly wouldn't take to heart Li Weiwei's words. After all, Ling Han only flew up here from a small world about 10 days ago. He would be categorized as one with neither foundation nor backing, so what if they were to trample on him? Ling Han looked at Li Weiwei and smiled. How come you are suddenly so nice to me? I'm somewhat not used to it. TSK. Of course, I still detest you very much, blockhead. But you are my follower, and only I can bully you. If other people can also do that, then wouldn't they be on the same level as me? Of course that cannot be allowed. Li Weiwei raised her chin proudly, revealing her porcelain neck, beautifully white and tender as a swan's. Its beauty was beyond one's imagination. Ling Han burst out laughing, not taking her words to heart, and said, Drop by my place later, I have something to discuss with you. Damn blockhead, don't tell me that you have designs on me? Li Weiwei suddenly looked alarmed. Don't think that you can make me sleep with you. In your dreams. Ling Han was dumbstruck. This little girl is too open-minded. Also, what could she be thinking about all day? Chapter 901. Class starts. What Li Weiwei was thinking about all day was naturally what every young woman would be thinking about. When they met a Prince Charming who was handsome, dashing, and with abilities so strong no precedent or antecedent existed, they thought about him having a wonderful romance with themselves. Since her losing to Ling Han, this blockhead would occasionally appear in her dreams. He actually interfered in the love between herself and her Prince Charming, and actually wanted to snatch her away. Unfortunately, it was all in her dreamscape, and she had no ability to resist. Thus, she was always bullied by Ling Han. This made the fourth young miss of the Li clan very upset. Every time she woke up, she would be gritting her teeth in resentment. She had not yet given Ling Han a good thrashing, and this guy had already bullied her quite a few times in her dreams. There was nothing that could be done. Who asked the fourth young miss's status to be too noble? If she sparred with someone, the other would usually go easy on her, yet she was horribly defeated by Ling Han, and that was indeed an unforgettable experience. Hence, when she heard Ling Han invite her to his residence, Li Weiwei immediately exercised her abundant imagination, and thought that this blockhead had some evil designs on her, so she naturally blurted out her thoughts. You aren't satisfied with just bullying me in my dreams, and still want to force yourself on me? Weiwei. Ji Yuner hurriedly pulled Li Weiwei back, afraid that she would say something else that was incredibly shocking. Li Weiwei covered her mouth, realizing that she had blurted something unbelievable out. Then, she immediately glared at Ling Han. This was naturally Ling Han's fault. Who asked him to always embarrass me in my dreams? The two girls found a spot to sit down. This immediately attracted a great many to approach them and attempt to strike up a conversation. They had their eyes either on the beauty of these two women, or Li Weiwei's noble status. Was the daughter of the left minister not awesome enough? Ma Xing is here, someone announced, and everyone turned to look at the door. They saw a sturdy young man walk in. Both his arms were bare, and he exuded a wild air, practically strong enough to cause suffocation. Perhaps his king's chi had developed precisely from his long-term contact with wild beasts. Ma Xing looked as if he had not fully woken yet. He looked like he could barely keep his eyes open. However, when he entered the classroom and saw Ling Han, that hazy gaze immediately became bright and alert. He stared at Ling Han and said, "Ling Han, I want to spa with you." "All right." Ling Han nodded. "If you want me to move, please pay 10 true origin stones first. If you lose, you have to pay another 100. I have to check the payment first as I cannot possibly fight for nothing." Many laughed loudly. Ling Han's money-grubbing tendencies were really too overwhelming. Li Weiwei grabbed her head and murmured, "This shameful guy, fancy that I stood up for him just now. Now, he has caused even me to be embarrassed." Yet Ji Yuner smiled, and as her beautiful eyes swept over Ling Han, a hint of curiosity filled her gaze. What kind of man was this person? Abruptly, Ma Xing's aura was stifled. He had come from the wilderness, so how could he possibly possess any true origin stones? After being dazed for a moment, he finally replied, "All right, when I have so many true origin stones, we shall fight." He was much more decisive than Luo Ba, and many who saw this nodded in approval. He was really proving himself as one who had come from the wilderness. He had a very straightforward, decisive character. Ma Xing no longer stared at Ling Han. As his eyes swept over and he spotted Ji Yuner, he immediately walked over and said, "Beauty, I like you. Why don't we eat some meat together later on?" Damn! A considerable number of people choked directly. They had seen people who were straightforward in their speech, but to be straightforward to this degree. This was really the first time they had seen such a person. It was nothing strange to like Ji Yuner. She had enough admirers to line up in a queue that could encircle the whole capital city 3 times. Still, Ma Xing was definitely the first to be so straightforward about it. Additionally, how could you woo a girl like that? You actually bluntly expressed the desire to treat her to meat. Were you planning to use this to bribe Fairy Ji? It was really silly to an adorable degree. Ji Yuner smiled reservedly and replied, "I have something else on after class. If there is a chance in future, I will share a meal with senior brother Ma." "Big sister Yun, what do you have on?" Li Weiwei deliberately asked, her head tilted to one side as if in doubt. She was someone who wanted the whole world in chaos. Ji Yuner directly used a finger to tap her small head, and after rolling her eyes, said, "Have you forgotten? I will be accompanying you later so that you won't have to worry you will be falling into someone's trap." "Oh." Li Weiwei nodded, and tugging on Ji Yuner's arm said, Right. You have to protect me. If there are 2 of us, that blockhead would definitely not dare to act rashly." After being gently refused, Ma Xing could not help but scratch his head. Then he sat down at one side. Soon, he sprawled out on his table and began sleeping. His snoring was as loud as thunder. Indeed, he had not woken up fully. Li Weiwei immediately leaned towards Ji Yuner's ear and said, "Big sister Yun, you definitely can't like this guy. He snores like a pig, and if you marry him, you would have to suffer every single day." Ji Yuner rolled her eyes again. Everything about this best friend of hers was great, except for the fact that she had an overactive imagination, which could make one not know whether to laugh or cry. As the time for class to begin arrived, more and more people came. When Lingyu appeared, many immediately revolved around him. His popularity was definitely excellent, and even Li Weiwei, as the daughter of the left minister, could not compare to him. Da da da. Crisp sound of footsteps rang out. It had an indescribable rhythm to it. It was obvious no one had seen the person yet, but just the footsteps caused one to uncontrollably think that an extremely beautiful woman was coming, for it could be the only explanation why those footsteps had such an amazing rhythm to them. All at once, the noise in the classroom immediately quieted. At the instant these footsteps appeared at the entrance, the whole classroom was already dead silent. They saw an incredibly alluring figure appear at the entrance. Her figure was tall and slender, fine and delicate, and every inch of it was perfect. And it was a bit too perfect. For example, her breasts were too big, her waist was too slim, and her hips were too rounded and erect, causing those who saw her feel like they were about to lose control of themselves. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders, and the sunlight spread out through her raven-black hair, exuding a hazy kind of beauty. When everyone's eyes turned to her face, they experienced an instant of suffocation. How could there possibly be such an exquisitely beautiful person in this world? Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner were both unprecedented beauties, but they obviously paled in comparison. It was not that they were not as beautiful as her, but rather her bearing and presence would intoxicate one with just a single look. There was a great many people in the immortal realm, and added with a generally long lifespan, there was naturally a shockingly great number of beautiful women. In a small world, a beauty would only appear once every million years, but here, it was possible that you could find a good few in a single city. When the quality of appearance had reached the extreme limit, then who the victor was would be judged by their bearing and status. For example, why was the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire named the greatest beauty in the world, and could cause the emperors of two majestic empires to be willing to deliver their whole empire into her hands? Admittedly, it was definitely because she was unbelievably beautiful, but there was also another important reason, and that was her ability. She was an elite that had perfected the heavenly body tier 1. Such ability and status would fill a man with endless desire to conquer her, and naturally added more credit to her beauty. Of course, rumors were that the Empress was indeed graceful and elegant. Even when the left minister and the others went to inform her of major business matters, they did not dare to look directly at this Empress at all, as they were afraid that they would do something offensive. That would really be seeking their own demise. Ling Han had never seen the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire before, but he had to admit that this beauty at the entrance was indeed extremely captivating, and had even surpassed Zhu Xian Heir as well as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Chapter 902. A Beauty That Is Already Taken. In the classroom, a series of thumping heartbeats was heard, fast like the beats of a drum. Even Ling Han felt slightly dazed and a little out of control. What more the others? This woman walked into the classroom, yet did not find a place to sit down. Instead, she stood on the platform and opened her mouth to say, "I am Shui Yenyu, and from today on, I am your lecturer." Wah! A round of cheers rose up in the classroom, and everyone was excited. This extremely beautiful woman was actually their teacher. She was already extremely attractive in the first place, but the forbidden identity of her as their teacher would make their hearts flutter even further. It's actually Shui Yenyu. She entered into the Northern Institution about 20 years ago, right? At the time, she and Zhou Menghuai were collectively called the Twin Pearls of the Empire, and their fame was even greater than that of the present three beauties of the imperial capital. I really can't imagine. Only 20 years passed, and she already advanced into the Mountain River tier. The level of the Shattering Void tier was too low, and no elite would deliberately focus on studying it. Thus, the class commonly would be taken over by a student that had just advanced into the Mountain River tier as they had experience they could share with their juniors. Of course, the person that could hold the position of a lecturer had to have obtained an extraordinary result in the Shattering Void tier, and would at least have battle prowess worth 19 stars of Shattering Void tier. I heard that senior brother Zhao is currently pursuing senior sister Shui. Which senior brother Zhao? Zhao Luan, senior brother Zhao of course. Hiss, a top genius from 500 years ago who reached battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier at the age of 26, broke through to the Mountain River tier at 30, advanced into the middle levels at 90, and into the higher levels at 380 years old. Zhao Luan, that senior brother Zhao? Aside from him, who else would qualify to be addressed as senior brother Zhao in the whole Northern Institution? AI. Then we can only admire senior sister Shui from afar, as she will be none of our business. Don't admire her too much either. I heard that senior brother Zhao is incredibly intimate with senior sister Shui, and would be displeased even if someone just looked too long at her. I advise everyone not to talk to senior sister Shui as much as possible, or else. Hee hee. Everyone sighed in despair. They had so fortunately been assigned a teacher beautiful enough to ensnare and enrapture the senses, yet were unable to court her at all. They had to be careful even when talking to her so as to avoid attracting Zhao Luan's attention, or they would definitely be done for. Zhao Luan had another identity, and that was the only son of the great General Zhao. One of the 7 generals, General Zhao was an elite of the heavenly body tier. He himself was extremely powerful, and his background was also extremely strong as well, so who would dare try to compete with him over a woman? Big sister Shui is so beautiful. Li Weiwei's hands were clasped tightly, and her eyes had practically become stars. Yet Ji Yuner sighed lightly in her heart. She was a bit like Shui Yenyu, as she, too, had no power over her own marriage. Hence, it was nothing good to be beautiful and possess high talent. Unless she was monstrous enough to reach the level of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Only then would she be able to take control of her own destiny. I have cultivated to the battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, so I can still give you some guidance, Shui Yenyu said. Her voice was sweet, and hearing her speak would make one feel great enjoyment. First, let's talk about why we should aim for 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. A student raised his head and said, I know. Though he knew that the beauty was already taken, he still wanted to make a good impression on this exquisite beauty. The higher the battle prowess in the Shattering Void tier, then the stronger your battle prowess would be in the immortal level. Shui Yenyu nodded and said, That's right. The living beings in the immortal level really have too long of a lifespan. For example, once you step into the Mountain River tier, you would have a lifespan of 100,000 years. Advancing every minor level would add on another 100,000 years. However, precisely because of that, advancement through the cultivation levels would be increasingly slower and slower, so it would be considered not too bad even if you could only break through once every few millennia. As a result, we would spend 100 years at most in the Shattering Void tier to aim for the highest battle prowess, yet could benefit in the next 100,000 years or even next 10 million years. Hence, I advise everyone to definitely be patient. Even if you do not rush up to battle prowess of 20 stars, you should at least reach 18 stars. Ling Han nodded internally. However, he was slightly confused as well. Even Wu Gaoyuan, Xiao Miaoyan, and the others had reached battle prowess of 18 stars. So how could Yi Shuang only have battle prowess of 15 stars? In her strongest condition, she was an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. Then, it was obvious that the force behind her had to surpass the 5 sects in power. But, even the 5 sects could nurture an heir with 18 stars of Shattering Void tier, so why was she so inferior? In a small world, battle prowess reaching 15 stars was indeed extremely amazing, but in the immortal realm, most likely everyone in this classroom had that kind of battle prowess, so it was not uncommon at all. He would ask her when he saw her again. Shui Yenyu paused for a moment, then said, Now, I will share some insight with you about aiming for the extreme limit of battle prowess. Indeed, she hid nothing, and explained clearly about her experiences on how she had rushed up to 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, but as everyone listened, they gaped in amazement. They really could not tell just from looking that this extremely alluring beauty would actually work so hard. According to how she had done things, it was very possible that she could have died. Ling Han suddenly opened his mouth and asked, Excuse me, Teacher Shui. How can we develop our pure strength to 20 stars of Shattering Void tier? The classroom was completely silent before tumultuous laughter broke out. I'm about to laugh myself to death. What kind of foolish nonsense is that? How could it be possible that strength could reach 20 stars? Haha, if one's strength could reach 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, then how many stars could his battle prowess reach? 25 stars? 30 stars? Don't think nonsense. That is not possible. He's really proving himself to have come from a small world, actually asking such a boorish question. Yet Shui Yenyu waved her hand, and answered solemnly, According to the research of former sages, after we have cultivated our origin power to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, we would only have 4 stars worth of space for improvement at most. The physical body is the same. There is similarly only 4 stars left to improve. It was different when a beautiful woman was talking, and everyone immediately silenced. But going by that calculation, the extreme limit of strength would be 17 stars, and there is still a slight gap from 20 stars. Shui Yenyu's eyes swept over the class and she said, Let me tell all of you, strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier does indeed exist. What? They all exclaimed in shock. This was too inconceivable, and had completely shattered their perceptions. Years ago Su Ran, Senior Su, reached strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier when none before had done so, and none afterward did, either. Shui Yenyu's beautiful eyes were bright, and her gaze revealed powerful admiration. If Su Ran suddenly appeared, it might be that he would not need more than a few words to win the heart of this beautiful woman. Then how would we make up for these 3 stars of strength? Someone questioned. Shui Yenyu shook her head, then answered, This is humanly impossible as one would need the aid of the heavens. For example, you could accomplish some amazing feat and obtain the approval of the heavens and earth. A thought flashed in Li Weiwei's mind, and she asked, Big Sister Xue, if one has come by splitting open the sky of a small world, would they get the aid of the heavens? Xue Yanyu thought for a moment, then replied, there has never been a small world that has appeared in the joint peace planet by splitting open the sky, so I am unsure. However, if one can split open the sky, this is indeed an amazing great feat, so it would not be impossible for him to be rewarded richly by the heavens and earth. Li Weiwei nodded. The Great Ling Empire had come by opening their sky, and this was no secret among the higher-ups of the nation. However, the Great Ling Empire was really too weak, so which great figure would take it to heart? Thus, among the younger generation, she was the only one aware that Ling Han was an emperor that had come by opening the sky. This guy had been capable of opening the sky, so his battle prowess was bound to have reached 20 stars, and with the additional reward from the heavens and earth, how powerful could his present battle prowess be? Li Weiwei's eyes instantly widened. Chapter 903. Discuss a business deal. Yet Ling Han thought of something else. In theory, it would be the inhabitants of the immortal realm that could not cultivate to 20 stars of shattering void tier, because the final 3 stars of strength was an unbreachable gap. Only people of a small world, through the bountiful rewards obtained from opening the sky, would be able to gain those additional 3 stars of strength. From a certain aspect it was fair. You, as an inhabitant of the immortal realm, enjoyed an endless supply of resources from birth, so you would have to make some kind of sacrifice in exchange. Of course, this kind of sacrifice was practically negligible. Just look at how many years the joint peace planet had existed, yet how many small worlds arrived by opening their sky in these many years. However, what qualified Su Ran to reach strength of 20 stars of shattering void tier, then? He had to have come by splitting open the sky. Why weren't there any legends about him? Even Xiang Chengyun thought that Ling Han was the first person in history to come by splitting open the sky, but there obviously had appeared another one 300,000 years ago. Perhaps some kind of secret was hidden behind this. Su Ran appeared 300,000 years ago. He stayed in the Scarlet Heaven Academy for only 300 years, and when he reached the peak of perfection of the Mountain River tier, he left the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and perhaps even joint peace planet. From then, all information about him was lost. Xue Yanyu said, if you want to attain strength of 20 stars of shattering void tier, you have to do 3 things simultaneously. First, you have to increase your origin power. Second, increase the strength of your physical body. Third, increase the might of your secret techniques. Today, we shall begin from increasing the strength of the physical body, and this is also the easiest place to start. She guided the students in their cultivation. This was really very simple. Just shatter all the bones in the body, then use a secret technique to temper them before restructuring your skeletal structure again. Once could only increase a little bit of the toughness of your physical body, but tempering for 100 times, your body could become as tough as steel. Hearing her say such an understatement, they all felt a muscle in their faces twitch. This was too frightening, right? How many could bear such agony? If they could knock themselves unconscious, and could complete the tempering under a completely ignorant, unaware state, that'd be fine. However, this required you to maintain awareness, and take the initiative to make the sacrifices to activate the process to be able to obtain the desired effects. Everyone understood the logic, but to accomplish it? It was really too difficult. Thankfully, they did not need to aim for strength of 20 stars. It was enough for them to push their battle prowess up to 20 stars. This, in comparison, was much easier, and there was no need to torture themselves so horribly. The day ended, and they all felt a ripple in their hearts due to Xue Yenyu's outstanding beauty and grace, but also felt slight respectful fear towards her, worrying that she would force them to break all the bones in their bodies. This was definitely no joking matter. Thankfully, Xue Yanyu also had to work on her own cultivation. Hence, they only had to go to class once every 5 days. At other times, they would be cultivating on their own. If they had any question, they had to keep it for next class. The teachers in the academy naturally could not compare to masters that were taken through the proper rites. This was not a real master-disciple relationship, but merely passing on of their skill. Ling Han called Li Weiwei out and headed to his place of residence. Ji Yuner followed suit. Hey, you're acting so mysterious. What actually did you want to say? Li Weiwei was an impatient person, and could no longer refrain from asking the moment they entered the courtyard. Ling Han chuckled and said, I want to treat the both of you to a meal. Tisk. Li Weiwei immediately scoffed. Do you think I haven't eaten exotic delicacies? To actually use this kind of method to bribe me? Hold on. She stared at Ling Han and said, Hey. It can't be that you've put some drug in the food and plan to conspire against us, right? You animal, you actually want to kill two birds with one stone. How dirty. Wei. Ji Yuner called out, her pretty face flushed bright red. Even she was astonished by the rich imagination this girl had. Ling Han drew out food ingredients from the Black Tower and began cooking. He said, take it or leave it. Do you think I'm begging you to stay here? I will not fall for your reverse psychology trick. That kind of ploy is something I've already done before I was 3. Li Weiwei suddenly took a sniff, and her eyes trained on the 3 pieces of meat on the grill, and then turned to glance at the soup on the side as well. Smells nice, she said, moved. None of your business, Ling Han said, smiling. There's poison inside this meat, so just stay and watch from the sidelines. Humph, if you dare to put poison in it, I'll kill you. Li Weiwei could not help but lick her lips and said, Blockhead, where did this meat come from? It smells great. Ling Han tossed her a look, then asked, what is it? Do you want to eat? Damn blockhead. Li Weiwei humphed. You really are petty. I just teased you a bit. Fine, I want to eat. So what about it? If you don't like it, come and bite me. Ling Han was struck speechless. No wonder the left minister had such a headache about this beloved daughter of his. Indeed, she did not have the slightest bit of reserved nature a well-bred young lady should have. He smiled and said, I still have much of this type of food. So, I want to make a business deal with you. You want to sell them to me? All right, however much you have, I'll take them all, Li Weiwei said with a casual wave of her hand, appearing to be very rich and overbearing. Yet Ling Han looked at her doubtfully and retorted, how many true origin stones would you have? If you have less than 1,000, then don't tell me you're rich. Li Weiwei opened her mouth to retort, but ultimately sighed in defeat. She really could not produce 1,000 true origin stones. The nobler the clan, the stricter the restrictions would be on the expenditure of their juniors. That was because if you had a lot of wealth in your hands, you could possibly spend your time drinking and making merry. However, the young age was the golden period of cultivation, so how could you waste it foolishly like that? Meanwhile, Ji Yuner's beautiful eyes lit up, and she asked, so what senior brother Ling means is to sell these food ingredients to the various noble and prestigious clans? Ling Han clasped his hands, smiling, and said, junior sister Ji is truly intelligent. He was ranked first in this batch of freshmen, and thus, whether they were older or younger than him, all would have to address him as senior brother. Li Weiwei was displeased and mumbled, what part of me is stupid? However, this is not spiritual meat. No matter how delicious it is, I do not think anyone would be willing to pay true origin stones for it. Ji Yuner could tell that Ling Han obviously wanted true origin stones. Furthermore, he wanted a large amount. Spiritual meat? What is spiritual meat? Ling Han questioned. Li Weiwei immediately scoffed and answered, you really are a country bumpkin, you don't even know what spiritual meat is. Let me tell you, only immortal-level demonic beasts could nurture spiritual meat. That is the most essential part of them, and one could devour it directly. It would greatly replenish your energy, and could also improve your cultivation. The effects are even better than the true origin stones. Unfortunately, no matter how big the demonic beast is, the nurturing of spiritual meat is influenced by cultivation level. If the demonic beast is in the minor levels of the mountain river tier, there is only as small a piece as this. She demonstrated the size to be about the size of a thumb. It was really pitifully small. One had to know that immortal-level demonic beasts could reach the terrifying size of a small mountain. Ling Han gave an "oh." Then, he would have another channel to increase his cultivation. When he saw a piece of barbecued meat was about done, he removed it, and used a small knife to cut it into 2 pieces. Then he placed it on plates, and passed them to Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner, respectively. He said, try out the taste first. See if it's worth paying true origin stones for. Blockhead, you really didn't put any drugs in it? Li Weiwei's face was filled with suspicion. If you're not going to eat it, give it back to me. Ling Han pretended he was about to take back the plate. Go away. Now that you've handed it into my hands, It belongs to me now. There's no way you're taking it back. Li Weiwei hurriedly defended her food. Using chopsticks, she picked up the barbecued meat and bit down. Abruptly, she had swift change of expression. Chapter 904. Descendant of the White Tiger. Weiwei, what is it? Ji Yuner asked hurriedly. She would naturally not take Li Weiwei's theory of the food being drugged seriously, but she was still worried when she saw Li Weiwei's current expression. This man from a small world might really not know respect and fear and do something shocking. It's too delicious, Li Weiwei suddenly exclaimed. Then she began wolfing down the food, and ate all the remaining barbecued meat. Then she turned to look fixedly at the plate in front of Ji Yuner, her eyes bright as if she was about to pounce over any moment. Ji Yuner could not help but stretch out her arm to guard her food, and asked, "Is it really so delicious?" Li Weiwei turned her face around and demanded, "Blockhead, quickly serve the remaining barbecued meat." Yet Ling Han smiled and said, "Will you pay true origin stones for it?" "Yes," Li Weiwei said impatiently. "Quick, hand it over, I want to eat to my heart's content today." "Take care you don't become fat," Ling Han said with a grin. "Ha ha ha ha, no matter how much I eat, I won't become fat. I have a natural perfect figure," Li Weiwei declared proudly. Ling Han picked up that completely cooked piece of meat and placed it onto Li Weiwei's plate. The girl was instantly ecstatic, and hurriedly used her chopsticks to pick up her meat, beginning to eat delightfully again. Ji Yuner could not help but feel curious. Was it really that delicious? Li Weiwei was the fourth young miss of the left minister. What exotic delicacies had she not eaten before? Yet now, she was actually so filled with unbearable anticipation. She elegantly picked up her chopsticks, plucked the barbecued meat, and took a light bite with her snow-white teeth. To be honest, the way this meat was barbecued was really not all that impressive, but in a single bite, the strong aromatic taste of meat diffused out instantly in the mouth. That kind of delicious taste would really make even one's spirit quiver. How could it be so delicious? She was more reserved, and also more restrained, but she still felt an urge to open her mouth wide and begin wolfing down the meat. Meow! Right at this moment, a white shadow flashed past, and before the three of them could react, the two pieces of meat on the barbecue grill vanished. "That white cat!" Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner both exclaimed simultaneously. Wasn't it precisely that famous white cat on the wall of the courtyard they now saw? Its mouth held the two pieces of barbecued meat, and they could actually see the proud look on its face as if it was mocking the three of them. "How about it? I still succeeded, didn't I?" It devoured the meat ravenously, and in moments, the two pieces of meat were completely eaten. No wonder it was that fat. This time, Ling Han had kept his guard up, but he still did not manage to stop it in time. Don't just look at how this fat cat had such a rounded stomach, its speed was really incredibly fast. "Wah, that was my meat!" Li Weiwei instantly screamed out horribly, and angrily pointing out with a finger said, "Damn cat, you dared to steal my meat, this is not over." Ling Han could not help but smile and said, "That was my meat, all right? I know you're very excited, but you should still distinguish between who's the host and the guest." Li Weiwei humphed and declared, "You are my man, so your meat naturally is mine as well." This cat. This isn't a cat, it's the divine beast White Tiger." Small Tower suddenly exclaimed. "Yesterday, I had some suspicions, but could not confirm them. But now, I can definitely confirm that this must be a descendant of the White Tiger." Ling Han gave an, "Ah." This round and fat cat actually wasn't a cat, but a tiger? This had to be a mistaken reincarnation, right? How could it have possibly developed into this kind of creature? He could not help but ask mentally, "Are you sure?" "Ho ho, only a descendant of the White Tiger would exude such a noble air. There's no mistake," Small Tower answered. "Is the White Tiger very strong?" Ling Han asked. He had seen a descendant of the true dragon before, and even the latter could do nothing but be thrashed by his hand. "TSK, what you encountered could still be considered as a descendant of the true dragon?" Small Tower scoffed. "At most, there was only a sliver of the bloodline of the true dragon in him. However, this White Tiger cub is different. Its bloodline is extremely dense, but it seems to have suffered some serious injury, which led to it being unable to completely exhibit the true strength of its bloodline. Hold on, just how strong is the white tiger? Ling Han asked. Do you know about the Genesis tier? Small Tower countered with a question of its own. Was this not a nonsensical question? Ho ho, if it was the white tiger in prime condition, then a puff of its killing intent would be able to eliminate someone in the Genesis tier, Small Tower answered with disdain. Really? Ling Han did not dare believe it. Genesis tier is the strongest ability of this world. Even if both are on the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, there would still be a world of difference, right? What more when? What more when what? Nothing, just concentrate on your cultivation and don't talk so much nonsense. Ling Han really felt like beating someone up. Wasn't this topic started by this Tsundra Tower? He did bother to argue and asked, then how about the descendant of the white tiger? Do you have the ability to tame it? Heh, if I did not, would I speak so much nonsense with you? Small Tower humphed. Fine, it was acting Tsundra again. However, this time, Ling Han was not planning to bicker again. He asked, how do we tame it? Wait, it has an owner. With how proud the white tiger is, how could it possibly serve trash the likes of the heavenly body tier? Take out some godly metal. The white tiger has an elemental alignment of metal, and can absorb the strength of godly metal to increase its cultivation, Small Tower said. Ling Han gave an ah. Now, the Black Tower would be able to produce a piece of godly metal every year. If he left it aside without using it, the quality of this piece of godly metal could be endlessly boosted. But, only a single year had passed at present, so he only had that one piece of godly metal in his possession. You cannot catch a wolf without being willing to sacrifice your child. This white tiger is still young. You can establish a good relation with it now, and if you can cure its illness in the future, it would not be difficult for it to acknowledge you as its master. Even if it is, it is still a very strong existence. Small Tower said. Ling Han considered the matter, then took out the godly metal. In any case, he was still some time away from immortal level. Moreover, as long as he had a large amount of true origin stones in hand, wouldn't it be a simple matter to bug godly metal? This is godly metal. Li Weiwei was the princess of the left minister's residence after all, so she recognized it for what it was with a single look. She could not help but be surprised. Blockhead, where did you get the godly metal from? It can't be you stole it from somewhere, right? Ling Han ignored her and merely waved the godly metal around in front of that fat cat, and asked, Fat and round cat, do you want this piece of godly metal? The fat cat instantly puffed up in indignation. It was the descendant of the white tiger, so how noble was it? This guy really is immortal indeed, to not know how amazing I am. It pretended to be aloof. Do you think that just because you're waving around a piece of whatever godly metal, I'll be hooked? You are really looking down on me. Ling Han thought for a moment, then drew out a ball of wool from within the Black Tower, and tossed it onto the ground. Meow! The fat cat instantly could not restrain itself and pounced over. Directly pouncing onto the ball, it finally realized it was much too unreserved, actually being seduced into revealing its true nature by a ball. It hurriedly crouched down, and using its claws, combed through its whiskers, putting on an act of being aloof. However, its eyes kept uncontrollably gliding towards that ball. It really wanted to pounce on the ball again. Seeing its actions, Li Weiwei broke out into an abrupt bout of hearty laughter. Ji Yuner was more reserved, yet still could not help covering her small mouth with a hand as a smile turned up the corners of her lips. Here's another. Ling Han threw out another ball of wool. Meow! The fat cat, unable to restrain itself, pounced. Chapter 905. Bribed with a single meal. If Small Tower had facial expressions, it would currently definitely be dumbfounded. After a moment of speechlessness, it finally said, This descendant of the white tiger's injury most likely is a brain injury. It really thought of itself as a cat. It was a bit of a retard. Little cat, come over quickly. I also have a ball. Li Weiwei picked up the ball of wool on the ground, and then gave it a toss. The fat cat could not restrain itself and pounced over, but then became so furious it erupted into a loud series of meowing, feeling incredible regret. Why was it that it had completely no resistance against woolen ball-like objects? Ling Han smiled and said, "Fat cat, let's be friends. In the future, you can eat as much of the barbecued meat here as you like until you're full. How about it? Though you can snatch it, I can still choose not to take it out. Furthermore, I could still choose to eat elsewhere as well." If it had been before it had tasted the delicious food inside the Black Tower, the fat cat would have naturally disdained this offer as something beneath its contempt. "Are you kidding me? Just giving me some food, and you want to be friends with me? In your dreams." But now, it merely had to think about the food inside the Black Tower, and it would already be drooling. It had stood guard here early on today. Wasn't it precisely because it wanted to snatch the food? It could not help but feel troubled. As the white tiger, its pride compelled it to be more strong-willed, and not submit for the sake of mere food, but as a glutton, it could not resist such temptation. "Isn't it just a friendship? I'm not seeking any benefits from you," Ling Han cajoled smilingly. "Meow." The fat cat nodded, and felt that Ling Han's words were very reasonable. In any case, there was no need for it to sacrifice anything in exchange. Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner were both shocked. One had to know that this cat had been described as incomparably frightening by Zhang de Man, and was an existence that could definitely not be trifled with. But now, it actually agreed to befriend Ling Han. They were practically dumbfounded. Most importantly, it was because this white tiger was really too young, and would easily be deceived. Otherwise, it was a cunning guy like Rabbit. Just try and see if it would be fooled. Ling Han took out more food, not just barbecued meat, but also other kinds of delicious delicacies. With thousand-year-old spirit herbs as supplementary ingredients, in a small world, this would be considered an incredibly extravagant meal, but in the immortal realm, it was more ordinary. That was because the lifespan of immortals was really too long. Moreover, powerful forces could separate out an area to be used for the cultivation of spirit herbs, and after a few thousand years, they similarly could harvest a considerable amount of thousand-year-old spirit herbs every year. However, in terms of numbers, it could not compare in any way to the production rate of the Black Tower at all. Hence, even Li Weiwei, a daughter of the left minister, could not help but gasp in surprise when she saw how extravagant Ling Han was. Could it be that a small world was so wealthy? Naturally, everyone ate this meat to their heart's content. Though the fat cat belonged to the Tsundra category, that was a natural temperament induced by the pride deserving of a divine beast. But as it feasted, it also relaxed, and lay down lazily on its back, allowing Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner to rub its tummy, completely at ease. It was a majestic descendant of a divine beast, yet was actually bought by a meal. How disgraceful. Ling Han summoned the gold-seeking rat as well, but did not allow Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner realize it. They only thought that he had brought it out from inside his rooms. The moment it saw the rat, the fat cat immediately reacted on instinct. Abruptly, it turned over and got to its paws, intending to do its rightful duty. Meanwhile, the gold-seeking rat was completely frozen as it flopped onto the ground with a paw, pretending to be dead. It was really scared half to death. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "This is my pet, so don't scare it." Only then did the fat cat lick its claws in an aloof manner. Since it had agreed to a friendship, it did have to give Ling Han some face. The gold-seeking rat scrambled onto Ling Han's shoulder with a xiao. One of its tiny claws pointed at the fat cat, and it squeaked loudly trying to say, "This big guy wants to eat me. Master, you must give me justice." Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner clicked their tongues in wonder. It was not uncommon for a demonic beast to have intelligence. In truth, the majority of demonic beasts that had reached the Shattering Void tier would even be capable of speech, and those that had advanced into immortal level could even take human form. But it was really rare to see such a cute baby rat, causing their beautiful eyes to light up as they fought each other over it. This scared the gold-seeking rat so badly it began playing dead again as it thought that these two women wanted to eat it. In the time it took for this meal, Ling Han had established a business alliance with the two women. The two of them would be in charge of opening the channel of sales, and he would be responsible for supply. The profits would be divided 50-50 between them, wherein Ling Han would earn one half, whereas Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner would share equally their half of the profits. Li Weiwei was in high spirits. This was an important opportunity that could change her image. In the eyes of her old father, she was definitely a young mistress that only knew to spend money, but who didn't have their own pride. Li Weiwei wanted to prove that she was not merely a rich young lady that could only depend on the benefits of having a good father. She was filled with fighting spirit, and quickly departed with Ji Yuner, impatient to go out and do something great. Meanwhile, Ling Han strolled to the library of the Northern Institution. Since it was a library, it naturally contained innumerable books, which included cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, alchemical techniques, formation techniques, and so on. But the academy would not allow you to obtain them for nothing. You would have to work hard to earn academic credits to exchange for these things. Of course, that applied for immortal-level students. Secret techniques meant for the Shattering Void tier were completely not in the consideration of the academy, and all students of the academy could peruse these techniques freely. Thus, Ling Han did not have to worry about not having academic credits, and not even having the right to enter into the library. Academic credits? I would have to consider obtaining them in future, Ling Han mused. Unless he took some higher up of the academy as master, he would have to think of his own ways to obtain immortal-level cultivation techniques. They could be auctioned off at an auction house for true origin stones, but the cultivation techniques that could be obtained from an auction house would definitely be incredibly exorbitantly priced. Even if he opened the channel of sales for the food inside the Black Tower, he could not possibly compete in wealth with the various rich and powerful people in the imperial capital. Or at least, before his alchemy prospered, he could only think of means to earn academic credits and exchange them for cultivation techniques from the library. He did not want to take anyone as master. After ascending to the position of monarch, his personality had also changed, and he now had the pride as befitting of an emperor. In the whole world, who would be capable of becoming master to an emperor? He arrived at the entrance to the library, and saw an old man seated at the door. His whole head was covered with white hair, covering him so fully that even his face could barely be seen. His upper body was continuously swaying to and fro ever so little, and he seemed to be sleeping very deeply. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then walked around him as he headed in. Pa, a walking stick stretched out, blocking his path. Kid, are you planning on stealing a book? This old man suddenly raised his head. I would not dare. I merely wanted to borrow books to read, Ling Han explained. The old man cast a meaningful look at Ling Han for a while, then said, Print your palm on that rock, and you would naturally know how many levels you may enter and what kind of secret techniques you can flip through. Thank you for your guidance, senior. Ling Han nodded, and looked at the stone pillar ahead of him. It was about half the height of a man, and there was a jade stone on top. It was only slightly bigger than the size of a palm. He stretched out a hand and pressed down. He instantly felt a numbing in his consciousness, which immediately returned to normal. If it was not for the fact that his spirit was incomparably sensitive, he could not have possibly felt it at all. Seeing the surprised expression on Ling Han's face, the old man could not help but give a "ee" and asked, You were actually able to sense a bit of your spirit being drawn out? Ling Han's expression suddenly changed drastically. The spirit was incredibly important, and now, a sliver of his spirit had actually been drawn out. Don't worry, it will not have any effect on you, the old man said, smiling. Then, waving his hand, he said, Go in. After seeing Ling Han vanished, he could not help but mumble to himself, This kid's spirit is actually so sensitive. This has indeed made me feel like cherishing his talent. He would be worth observing for a while. Chapter 906. Coming up with an idea. Ling Han could only wander on the first floor of the library, but the books there were all accessible to him, without any restrictions on reading. Obviously, these were techniques and arts below immortal level. Ling Han was also not in a hurry to find the alchemical arts. He slowly flipped through the books as he walked along. The origin power cultivation technique which he was currently cultivating was by no means a top-notch one. If he wanted to rely on the extreme young technique to attain the strength of an additional 4 stars outside of origin power, it would be tough. He might have to stop at the strength of 18 or 19 stars. Therefore, he intended to practice a different cultivation technique. Changing to a different cultivation technique would inevitably have a considerable impact on his advancement into higher cultivation levels, but was absolutely necessary in order to charge towards the strength limit of 20 stars. The Scarlet Heaven Academy, or at least the Northern Institution, was very generous. There was a lot of techniques here, all complete with 10 levels of cultivation and usable to cultivate up to the peak of the Shattering Void tier. After reaching this step, one could apply at the academy to learn the elite's method of cultivation such as instructions and technique applications for charging towards the Mountain River tier. After stepping into the mountain river tier, the rest would depend on the individual. This was also the unchanging and eternal truth of the martial arts world. Practicing cultivation would always be your own personal matter. If you couldn't understand any obscure theory, then no one would be able to explain it clearly to you. You could only think about it yourself, which might take a few days or a few years before you finally comprehended it. There was also a possibility that you would be stuck at this hurdle for a lifetime. It was practically fatal for a cultivator to develop a habit of relying on others. After searching for a long time, Ling Han did not find a technique most suitable for himself. While pushing one's strength to 9 stars, 10 stars, or even 11 stars of Shattering Void tier was relatively simple, breaking through to 12 or 13 stars was extremely difficult. An improvement by 1 star was akin to reaching for the heavens. After a moment's contemplation, he suddenly felt a burst of inspiration, and thought to himself, "Now, I am complete with 6 attributes. What if I practice 6 different cultivation techniques and combine them?" With such a thought, he suddenly felt an uncontrollable excitement. He searched high and low for 6 techniques of similar level and comprising of 6 attributes, which belonged to the category of the 5 elements, 1 and thunder, and then memorized each of them. The materials here couldn't be taken out. Unlike traditional books, these techniques were inscribed on bones. Some were beast bones, and some were even human bones, and holding them was slightly hair-raising. As the fingers touched them, the bones glowed, and the techniques were manifested. They were all seen as interweaving secret patterns, and not real words. There was also a chart of veins, which described the route of flow of origin power and certain concealed acupuncture points in the human body that needed to be unblocked. So there are such things. This truly opened Ling Han's eyes. He came from a small world, and even if he had lived 2 lifetimes, this was something he couldn't change. Given the limitations of the environment in a small world, he had only studied 2 types of 10-level techniques. One was from the sea race, and another one from the 5 sections. These techniques could at best allow him to cultivate his strength to the level of 11 stars of Shattering Void tier, still 2 stars away from reaching the limit of origin power. Ling Han was utterly engrossed in going through the techniques. He was already standing at the pinnacle of the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. These techniques were just a reference for him, not a difficult problem that would constantly drive him up the wall in frustration. He couldn't help but be extremely delighted. He was confident that he could break through and attain the strength of 13 stars of origin power after integrating the 6 techniques. There was no need to worry about body arts. The 9 Dragons Tyrant body art was absolutely awesome, enough for him to reach the utmost limit of brute force. After spending just less than half a day, he closed his eyes in satisfaction. Then, after exhaling a long breath, he revealed a smile. He put the bone books back in place before heading off in search of alchemical arts. Found it! Ling Han found an ancient scripture. This one was an actual book. Flipping through it, he saw that it recorded the techniques to refine level 10 alchemical pills, and described the effects of some level 10 alchemical pills on cultivators of Mountain River tier. For example, Replenishing Spirit Pill. Ling Han wasn't greedy. He decided to only work on the recipe for this alchemical pill for the time being. He memorized the pill's recipe. It was a simple matter as long as one had a memory good enough. This wouldn't be a problem for most cultivators. The difficulty lay in extracting the patterns from the medicinal ingredients and weaving them together during the process of concocting the pills. It was too easy to make mistakes. A moment of inattentiveness, and the incorrect interweaving of patterns would cause the whole concoction to be completely destroyed. Therefore, this pill recipe's record of the ingredients was only a simple half a page, while the method of interweaving the patterns used up full 18 pages. And this was just a level 10 alchemical pill. The god-level alchemical pills were even more terrifying. One whole book would only record the recipe of 1 alchemical pill, and this book would be outrageously voluminous. Fortunately, the lifespan of immortals was long enough, so they would have enough time to learn many more pill recipes. Otherwise, someone with Shattering Void tier's lifespan would only be able to study a dozen or so god-level pill recipes. After spending another half a day, Ling Han finally closed the book and shut his eyes, digesting the information on this particular pill recipe. This might just be a recipe for Replenishing Spirit Pill, but since it would have certain effects on cultivators of the Mountain River tier, its recipe was naturally complicated, and could be regarded as the recipe for a pseudo-god-level pill. For Ling Han, who was merely in the Shattering Void tier, refining it would be quite difficult. The strength of my spirit has been greatly improved by the reincarnation tea. Furthermore, with the cultivation of the indestructible heaven scroll, the strength of my spirit is stable enough to refine this replenishing spirit pill, Ling Han thought to himself confidently. However, alchemy is a process of trial and error. From failure to success, it might take a few times, or possibly dozens of times. I only possess 2 true origin stones. I'm not sure how many ingredients I can buy. He put the ancient book back in its original place, and then turned around to leave. He planned to go out of the academy to buy the ingredients for refining the replenishing spirit pill. When Ling Han came to the library's main entrance, the white-haired elderly man glanced at him, and when Ling Han walked out through the doors, the old man suddenly said, "I am surnamed Su, you can call me Old Man Su. Do drop by when you have the time. I like chatting with young people." Ling Han was startled. He turned around and slightly bowed at the old man and said, "Yes, senior." Although the old man's aura wasn't conspicuous, and he looked like any ordinary old man, would there be any useless person in the Scarlet Heaven Academy? His whole person exuded a lofty and unyielding disposition, but it was different from being haughty and arrogant. Old Man Su waved his hand at Ling Han. He stood there until Ling Han turned and walked away. After Ling Han's figure disappeared, Old Man Su murmured, "This kid actually intends to practice 6 different cultivation techniques. Hee. Not many people know that it would be impossible to charge towards the ultimate strength of origin power by merely practicing one cultivation technique, but a cultivator from a small world actually chanced upon the solution by chance. This is really interesting. This is certainly luck, but luck is also a part of one's strength. Had it not been, then I wouldn't have fallen into such circumstances. This is my destiny, my luck." Perhaps, the regrets of this old man could be made up by this kid. Just as Old Man Su said the last sentence, his gaze suddenly sparkled, and a frightening aura surrounded his whole body. However, a black-colored chain also appeared simultaneously, and tightly wrapped itself around Elder Su's chest, causing him to cough up blood incessantly. 4 galaxies had actually appeared behind him, and each of them was of the same size. Had anyone seen this, they would be absolutely shocked to the core. Who would have thought that an elderly man guarding the library in the Northern Institution was actually a peerless elite, whose cultivation level had reached the pinnacle of perfection level of the heavenly body tier? Chapter 907. Pill Concoction. After leaving the library, Ling Han immediately went out of the academy, and strolled around the imperial capital in search of a pharmacy. The practice of cultivation would always be inseparable from alchemical pills, but the concocting of alchemical pills could only be done by an alchemist. This limited the number of pharmacies available. Ling Han had visited a few, but found that the scope of these pharmacies was too limited. The alchemical pills put up for sale were of heaven grade and below, so it would be impossible for him to purchase the ingredients required for the concoction of replenishing spirit pill there. Seeing that the payment there was settled using gold and silver, one would already know the level was too low indeed. After looking for a while, Ling Han finally found a pharmacy with a large shop front and a big signage. He had yet to go in, but saw that there were 4 guards standing at the door, each with the cultivation level of the Shattering Void tier. He knew it now. Inside this pharmacy, there would definitely be something that he needed. Sure enough, the alchemical pills and medicinal herbs here were very complete, and the highest grade alchemical pill even reached the 7th layer of the immortal level. What kind of concept was this? That was for the consumption of elites who had attained the higher levels of the Sun-Moon tier. If Ling Han was to consume one now, his body would explode, and he would die. This also applied to the true origin stone. The condensed spiritual chi of the heaven and earth contained within it was too concentrated. If he were to refine it now, he would only be courting death, and it would do nothing to upgrade his cultivation level. Therefore, now this cultivation treasure could only be used as currency. Ling Han was not in the least reluctant to part with it. As the saying went, you have to lose some to gain some. As long as he would be able to concoct replenishing spirit pill, it would help him generate a lot more true origin stones in return. Fortunately, the purchasing power of true origin stones was considerably good. A standard-sized true origin stone that would be about 500 grams could buy 5 replenishing spirit pills, or as much raw materials as adequate for 10 portions. 10 portions were not only able to produce 10 replenishing spirit pills. Rather, each portion could produce up to 5 pills. It was calculated according to the size of the standard alchemy furnace, taking into consideration the difficulty of interweaving the patterns. This was the standard.
However, few alchemists could refine all the ingredients in the furnace. 5 were the limit, and being able to refine 3 would already be above the standard. Taking into account the cost, as long as 10 portions of the ingredients could be refined, merely 10% success rate of pill concoction was sufficient to earn back the cost. From this point of view, alchemy was a profitable business. The same was true in the immortal realm and small world alike. It was a pity becoming an alchemist was too difficult, and an alchemist with a high success rate of pill concoction was even rarer. After learning that Ling Han wanted to concoct the replenishing spirit pill, the staff was very enthusiastic, and said that if Ling Han was successful in concocting said pill, they could buy it, but not at the price of 1 true origin stone for 5 pills. It would be 1 true origin stone in exchange for 7 pills instead. They would have to earn something, right? Shattering Void Tier was definitely the largest group of cultivators in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, so the replenishing spirit pill was very popular, and there was no need to fear that it wouldn't all sell even if there was a large number available. On the contrary, this kind of alchemical pill had always provided a small profit but rapid turnover, and was more effective in attracting customers. Sometimes it would even be sold at a loss. Ling Han did not care about this. He not only bought ready-made ingredients, but also seeds. Having such a good thing like the Black Tower, it would be silly not to make full use of it. Soon, he would have an endless supply of raw ingredients, and no longer need to buy them here again. Moreover, the replenishing spirit pill was in the end merely a level 10 alchemical pill. Most of the ingredients used would only require 100 years of growth, and only a few of the ingredients would require twice as long. For the Black Tower, it would only take 2 months. Ling Han had spent 2 true origin stones. One was to buy 10 portions of the ingredients, and the other one was used to buy plenty of seeds. After returning to the academy, he began to bury his head in concocting the pills. He naturally had no difficulty in purifying the ingredients, but he took a deep breath next. The next step was a crucial one, concocting the pill itself. Open up the furnace. Within the Black Tower, Ling Han didn't have to worry about the extreme temperature of the flame. Inside it, he was a true god. Boom, the flames were raging, and Ling Han began to put the ingredients into the alchemy furnace. Refined with true fire, the energy in the medicinal ingredients began to volatilize, and the patterns were intertwined. Ling Han acted, reorganizing these patterns to meet the requirements of replenishing spirit pill. It was so that the pill would give the desired effect. He kept on putting in the medicinal ingredients, while the veins were also becoming more and more complicated. With the sound of a bang, Ling Han sighed. The furnace exploded. He had failed. As an alchemy emperor, how long had it been since he last had a taste of failing a concoction? Ling Han couldn't help but think of the past. He was constantly swimming in the ocean of the path of alchemy. Explosion of the furnace was common. How would there be an alchemy emperor in the later years without so many failures first? Instead of immediately starting to refine the second batch of ingredients, he closed his eyes and recalled the previous attempt in detail, trying to ascertain the cause of his failure. If he couldn't figure it out, then even if he were to attempt concoction 100 times, he would still fail 100 times. After a long time, Ling Han began the process of refining for the second time. Boom! He failed again. However, if someone else was present, they would find that Ling Han's failure this time came later than the last attempt. In other words, he was making progress. After summarizing his failure, he made another attempt. Boom! This was the third failure, but no matter, there was improvement. At the 4th attempt he still failed. For the 5th attempt he still failed. Then, the 6th attempt also ended in failure. But the corners of Ling Han's lips revealed a smile. He had lost track of time, and fully devoted himself to concocting the pills. He was confident enough that he would succeed in the 7th attempt. Come! He was extremely cautious. His hands were constantly moving, exerting a strong force, conditioning the patterns of the medicinal ingredients, and making the different ingredients resonate with each other. He was interweaving the patterns in such a way to give the effects that a single medicinal ingredient could never produce. After half a day, Ling Han's expression was solemn as the most crucial time had arrived. Open! He humphed lightly, and his hands instantly began moving innumerable times. 3 blazes of flames burst forth. It was 3 fire guide, a secret technique of his own creation. He suddenly opened the lid, and saw that there were 5 jade green round pills in the furnace, but with the opening of the lid, 4 pills shattered to pieces, leaving only the last one leaping about. It seemed to have a life of its own, attempting to escape. Ling Han quickly took hold of it, and went out of the Black Tower, intending to experience the pill tribulation of a level 10 alchemical pill. But, as he stood in the yard, he didn't see any signs of thunderclouds all along. Could it be that because it was refined in the Black Tower, it was disregarded by the heavens and earth? Meow! The cries of a very angry cat were heard. A big fat cat threw itself over, unsheathing its claws to scratch Ling Han. Hey, are we not good friends? Ling Han quickly dodged. Meow, 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 meow. The fat cat was screaming incessantly. It said that it has waited for you for 7 days, but you have not appeared. Where was the meat you promised? Said the small tower. Ling Han's mouth slightly twitched. You can even talk to cats. What am I not capable of? Small tower responded in a tsundere tone. Ling Han was dumbfounded. 7 days have actually passed? He grabbed the fat cat and said, all right, I will treat you to some meat. Please stay your hand. No, I mean claws. Otherwise, how am I going to make you a meal? The fat cat finally stopped attacking Ling Han. It sat on its hind legs, bearing an aloof and proud expression. Humans, you all are the slaves of this royal cat. Chapter 908. Obvious Progress. Ling Han made a huge meal for the fat cat and himself. Naturally, gold-seeking rat joined them and ate to its heart's content. Looking at the cat and rat being together like partners in crime, Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. This was way too harmonious one. This thought had yet to pass when the fat cat pounced onto gold-seeking rat. This little mouse actually dared to sneak a look at its meat. This scared the latter so badly that its 4 limbs became stiff, while its tail went straight as a ramrod. It then lay on the ground, playing dead. This trick was time-tested. It used to amuse the ladies the likes of Zhu Xian'er and Helian Sun Zuanli, who would drool looking at itself, causing the little one to feel extremely insecure. Fortunately, that girl who was a more gluttonous disaster than itself had already left them. However, its happiness had barely lasted a few days when another ferocious fellow came along again. Why did Master always have these scary monsters that would frighten this little one by his side? Ling Han couldn't help bursting into laughter, but then the sound of pa 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 was heard from the courtyard door. He went over to open the door, and saw Li Weiwei standing in the doorway with her hands on her waist, bearing an expression as if she was going to gobble someone up. Stupid blockhead. Where have you been the past 7 days? Do you know that I have been coming here to look for you every day until my legs have become sore? You are just my follower, yet you dare to make me run around looking for you, not to mention making a few wasted trips. Are you trying to rebel? She rattled on with her complaint, showing the bossy nature of the crafty and unruly young mistress that she was. Ling Han quickly raised his hands in surrender and smiled. My sincere apologies. Something had cropped up a few days ago. Aren't I back now? Right, you are so excited. Has the sales channel for the ingredients been opened? Obviously. With me paving the way, what problems could there be? Li Weiwei harumphed. All the ingredients you gave me already sold out. However, because it was merely for them to try, we didn't earn even a single true origin stone. Ling Han nodded. Had it not been for Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner, ordinary people wouldn't have been able to send food into the households of influential officials. However, since they had eaten the food, it would now be his turn to have the final say. He took out a lot of food and passed it to Li Weiwei, who was getting very excited. Soon, there would be true origin stones recorded in their accounts. Although this amount wasn't much, she had earned it by her own hands, which made her feel exhilarated beyond measure. Ling Han nevertheless shook his head. Such a business couldn't be maintained too long. There was no other way. How could he explain the origin of these ingredients? The capacity of a spatial spirit tool was limited. If he were able to endlessly supply these foods, he would certainly be suspected. After all, these foods were extremely delicious. It would be difficult to guarantee that no one would be curious. Although Li Weiwei's identity was very noble, Ling Han was just a fallen emperor. To be honest, had he not still retained this identity, which cultivator of Mountain River tier would have held him in high regard? So what if you were bullied, insulted, or even killed? This was just quick money. Its purpose was to accumulate true origin stones while refining the replenishing spirit pill. Without a hitch, this was the correct path to make a fortune. Otherwise, there was no way that one would be able to catch up with the earnings from the sale of replenishing spirit pills from a single furnace, even if one was to press on with the food business for a whole month. After sending Li Weiwei off, Ling Han began to concoct alchemical pills, but this time it wasn't done within Black Tower, but within the courtyard itself. The big fat cat, having eaten and drunk its fill, was lying on its stomach on the wall of the courtyard, bored. But with it there, likely no one would dare to come and disturb Ling Han. They ought to know that this white cat was raised by the head of Scarlet Heaven Academy. An elite of the heavenly body tier. Would they dare to provoke him? Concocting pills outside of the Black Tower was slightly more difficult. After all, the control of the fire's temperature was no longer as he pleased. But Ling Han still made progress. Pennsylvania. Pa. Two sounds rang out when he opened the furnace's lid. This time, only 3 alchemical pills burst to pieces. 2 alchemical pills were concocted successfully. One shouldn't look at it as merely getting just one more pill. This was actually a great improvement. If it was any other alchemist, it might take them months or even years to obtain such results. But Ling Han was the alchemy emperor, and level 10 alchemical pill was still within his ability, so such progress was not at all unusual. However, there was still no tribulation brought about by the concoction of alchemical pill. Could it be that the level here is so high that even a level 10 alchemical pill wouldn't trigger a tribulation? Ling Han guessed. He couldn't think of another possibility. If there is no pill concoction triggered tribulation, then so be it. Let's do this again. In his 9th attempt, he harvested 3 alchemical pills from the furnace, while on the 10th attempt, he harvested 4. He ran out of ingredients at that point. If I could refine one more furnace's portion, then perhaps I could achieve perfection, Ling Han thought to himself. He had already harvested 10 replenishing spirit pills. Even if he could only exchange 7 pills for 1 true origin stone, he had already earned back his investment. The other true origin stone had been used to purchase more seeds. Alchemy is still the most profitable business. I had chosen the right profession. Ling Han smiled as he went out. He intended to sell the 7 pills and buy ingredients. This time, he actually spent another 3 days, so engrossed in alchemy that he didn't even have time to cultivate any techniques. The lack of manpower really makes me feel that time is not enough. Ling Han sighed. Now that he had to start from scratch with alchemy and martial arts, it would seem that he had to also make a choice and choose the main area to focus on. If he were to try to manage both, he really wouldn't be able to handle it. I'll walk the road of martial arts. Ling Han quickly made up his mind. No matter how glorious alchemy was, it would merely act to serve martial arts. The respect that alchemists had received was also accorded to them by cultivators. If an elite cultivator had no respect for you, could you manage to beat him up? Therefore, at the end of the day, making one's own strength as powerful as possible was truly the path to dominance. He went to the big pharmacy from previously, and offered the 7 replenishing spirit pills for sale. The shop assistant didn't know that it was Ling Han's first time refining, and merely thought that he was a veteran. He could not help but shake his head. Small-time alchemists like you should find some backing. Although a share of your earnings would be taken, there is also protection. It's unlike if there is even a slight mistake, you can't even get back your cost. The shop assistant kindly advised Ling Han then. After all, alchemists were a rare breed, and an alchemist who could concoct the replenishing spirit pill was also not that simple. Ling Han just smiled, and allowed the other party to give him 10 more portions of ingredients, which he kept in the Black Tower and left. Oh! As Ling Han walked out of the pharmacy, Luo Lai just came from around the corner. He stared at Ling Han's back, and could not help but feel odd. He thought that Ling Han was merely a lowlife from a small world. What was he doing here? He walked into the pharmacy, called over the shop assistant who had previously served Ling Han, and asked, "That person earlier, what did he come here for?" The shop assistant, being aware that this was the young master of the Luo clan, didn't dare to not answer. Besides, this wasn't anything shameful. The customer sold 7 replenishing spirit pilsel, and in addition. What? Luo Lai immediately interrupted the other party's words, his eyes shining, and said, "Are you sure?" The shop assistant nodded. Could he even make a mistake about this? Luo Lai immediately smirked at the academy strictly prohibited its students to sell the alchemical pills they were granted as well as techniques, martial arts, and the likes. Ha ha ha. He had been cracking his head as he was unable to find any weakness of Ling Han, but had not expected the other party to present one himself.
It was just that. How did the other party obtain 7 replenishing spirit pills? This thought merely flashed across Luo Lai's mind for a moment, and he immediately discarded it. As long as Ling Han had sold the alchemical pills bestowed to him by the academy, then it would be a serious offense. He was so excited that he didn't even bother to buy any medicine. He turned around and directly returned home.
The irony of it was that if he had queried the clerk more, he would be able to deduce that those replenishing spirit pills were concocted by Ling Han. Of course, he might still obstinately persist in going about things the wrong way, and firmly refuse to believe the possibility that a young cultivator from a small world could actually practice both alchemy and martial arts.
Chapter 909. Black Market. Luo Lai hurriedly returned home, and raced to find Luo Ba.
He knew he was not as clever as his elder brother. If he allowed Luo Ba to handle things, they would cause the greatest strike to Ling Han.
Brother, brother.
He called out, panting heavily. The descendants of important nobles like them would not usually remain in the academy. The conditions for cultivation were even better in their own home, and they merely had to go to the academy once every 5 days to attend a lecture.
He recounted what he had previously witnessed.
When Luo Ba heard all he had to say, he immediately erupted into great laughter.
Ling Han, this time you've fallen into my hands. Just see how I will deal with you.
Brother, what do you plan to do?
Luo Lai quickly asked. He, too, bore a deep-seated hatred towards Ling Han.
Luo Ba thought for a moment, then said, a thief must be caught red-handed. Have someone stand guard, and the next time Ling Han appears, we'll catch him together with his loot.
Brother, that guy might have seen me. Perhaps he would switch to another place to sell off the alchemical pills next time. Luo Lai was still quite clever.
Luo Ba nodded and said, we'll prepare for both eventualities. We'll wait until just before this month's monthly assessment, and if we still have yet to catch him red-handed, then we'll directly tell on him. Anyways, with that shop assistant as a witness, Ling Han would similarly not be able to escape punishment. He hummed for a while, then said, for this matter, we have to request 17th Clan Elder's help. He is an elder by rotation of the Northern Institution, and with his cooperation, it would not be difficult to execute Ling Han for this crime.
That's right, he has to die. Luo Lai exclaimed with bloodshot eyes.
He, the honorable young master of the Luo clan, had actually been beaten onto the ground and forced into submission. What great humiliation was this?
As long as Ling Han was still alive, he would not be able to sleep soundly at night.
Luo Ba smirked coldly. Merely the sale of alchemical pills was not enough to cause Ling Han to lose his life. After all, the latter was a 4-star genius, and that was something rarely seen in history. However, rules were still rules. With 17th Elder stepping out to exert pressure and turning the small matter into a big one, it would be enough to expel Ling Han from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Furthermore, without the backing of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, what would a little cultivator of the Shattering Void tier from a small world be worth?
A careless stomp and he would be dead. To actually dare to steal the limelight from me. This is the price.
Luo Ba's eyes shone with a cold light.
The first one was Ling Han, and the second was Ma Xing. He would deal with both of them.
Unfortunately, though the power of the Cheng clan was not on par with the Luo clan, Cheng Haofei was not someone that he could just deal with as he desired, so he could only spare him.
Otherwise, he'd eliminate all 3. Meanwhile, Luo Lai was satisfied with just dealing with Ling Han.
He snickered maliciously, and was impatient to see the scene in which this great enemy of his would be trampled underneath his foot.
When Ling Han returned to the academy, he just happened to bump into Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner. The first batch of food ingredients was completely sold out, and had been sold off for a total of 36 True Origin stones. Ling Han gained half the share, which was 18 True Origin stones, whereas Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner each earned 9 True Origin stones.
In truth, this could actually be considered a great sum of money. One had to know that even if Ling Han and Ji Yuner were 2 of the top 3 prodigies, they were each only given 2 True Origin stones from the academy, so it could be seen how valuable they were.
Li Weiwei was even more pleased. Although she definitely did not lack these 9 true origin stones, they were earned with her own effort, which made her extremely happy. Oh right. You've already missed 2 classes with Big Sister Shui. Big Sister Shui is very angry, so you can just wait to be killed. Li Weiwei said, delighting in his misery. Cooperating with Ling Han to earn money and being unhappy with Ling Han were 2 different things. To mess with Ling Han was a thought that had never vanished from her mind. Ling Han sighed. He had been busy with concocting alchemical pills these few days, and he still had to concoct alchemical pills for a few more days. No matter what, he would have to finish off the medicinal ingredients he had just bought, right? Furthermore, for the sake of earning money, he could only concoct alchemical pills. Who asked him to be born without a father who was the left minister, or a mother that was the right minister? After the 2 women enjoyed a meal, and played around with the big fat cat, they took a whole spatial spirit tool's worth of food ingredients each and left. They did not ask how Ling Han's spatial spirit tool was so big, and how much stuff was actually stored inside. After all, neither of them was foolish. Ling Han once again began to concoct pills. In 200 years of his last life, he had been an alchemist, and this identity had seeped deep into his bones. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Time passed very quickly. This was level 10 alchemical pill, and even Ling Han would not be able to speed up the concoction time by much. Concocting a whole furnace's worth of pills, no matter what, would need at least half a day. Thus, after concocting these 10 batches, another 5 days passed. However, his rewards were colossal. Aside from the beginning 2 furnaces, which only had 4 successful pills each, the following 8 attempts had reached the perfect standard of 5 pills respectively. This was how the Alchemy Emperor should be. Ling Han was also very satisfied. This time, he had a total of 48 replenishing spirit pills, and even if 7 pills could only be sold off for a single true origin stone, he could still earn 7 true origin stones, which was 6 times his costs. Great profit, this was really great profit. Of course, this was only limited to an alchemy emperor like him. In the case of an ordinary alchemist, it would be considered quite impressive if they could only earn 20 to 30% profit, just like Ling Han's first attempt of concocting this pill. He did not plan to head to the pharmacy to sell these 7 pills in exchange for a single true origin stone was too much of a loss. The Scarlet Heaven Academy had a black market, and students would head there to sell and exchange items. Everyone was masked in the black market. The only consideration was the goods, and no questions about the seller or customer's identity would be asked. If one was interested, they'd just pay and the transaction was done. Absolutely no one would get to the bottom of things. Ling Han was confident that even if he sold 5 pills for a single true origin stone, there would be others fighting just to buy from him. The reason was very simple. Because this was concocted by his hand. He had tasted one, and the replenishing spirit pills he himself concocted were at least 30% more effective than the replenishing spirit pills the Academy granted. Furthermore, these 5 pills were only sold for a single true origin stone. It would be strange if they didn't sell out like mad. When night arrived, Ling Han found a cloak along with a black scarf. After he left, he covered himself with the cloak and scarf in a corner, and came to the foot of a small mountain. The imperial capital was too big, and the academy was too big as well. There were 3 mountains in the academy itself, and this was the smallest one. As soon as night arrived, there would be stalls set up in this place, but everyone would be hiding their identities here. Who knew when this tradition had begun? In any case, the academy did not bother with them, so it could be said that the academy had given tacit approval for its existence. The black market naturally started at night. It was very dark here. The only light came from the moon. There was absolutely none of the commonly used stored light crystal san item used to provide light in the immortal realm. It could exude bright light in the midst of darkness, and one could adjust its brightness degree, which made it very practical. But here, not just stored light crystals, not even a single torch was present. Low-key and mysterious was the main theme of this place. Ling Han arrived in a corner and sat down. He set upright a wooden plaque in front of him, on which was written, "Replenishing Spirit Pill, sold in batches of 5, 1 true origin stone, extraordinary quality." He sat down, but as black-cloaked people passed one after another, they merely gave him a passing glance. Some would even humph lightly in disdain. Those that bought things here were aiming for either cheap prices or rare items. Otherwise, if the price was similar, then why should one not buy it outside? It would be safer. Moreover, if any problems came up, one could still find the seller. Why should they really consider it extraordinary quality with just a declaration of extraordinary quality? Ling Han sat down for 2 hours, and finally saw a person with incredibly well-built figure walk over. Even his cloak could not conceal his sturdy figure. It was really too amazing. The person stood in front of Ling Han and said, "Where's the goods? I want to take a look." Ling Han nodded, took out a pill bottle, and tossed it over. There was only a single replenishing spirit pill stored inside. Chapter 9-10. Curious Gu Lingyu. The man took the pill bottle and pulled out the cork. He caught a whiff of the fragrance within, and immediately revealed an expression of surprise. This was indeed replenishing spirit pill, and the quality was quite good. It was purer than those that he would normally consume. He poured out the alchemical pill and examined it carefully. Then he nodded and said, "If they are all of this quality, then give me 5 pills." Ling Han handed over another pill bottle. After that, he took back the previous alchemical pill, and said, "Thank you for your patronage. You can examine it again." The man did not dare to show off how rich he was here. The moment he turned around, they would both have nothing to do with each other. After a careful inspection, he nodded in satisfaction before tossing a true origin stone to Ling Han. Ling Han also conducted his own inspection. This was a genuine one, but it might have been used. Its value was naturally completely different. Both sides nodded in satisfaction. This deal was concluded as both accepted it. When one person had given it a try, there would naturally be the second and third. For the first time, Ling Han had left over 3 replenishing spirit pills, of which he had eaten 1. In addition to the 48 pills from the second round, there was precisely enough for 10 portions. 10 times the profit. This was indeed satisfying, but even if he could concoct 10 replenishing spirit pills in a day, it would take 5 days, and that would be much too time-consuming. Had other alchemists known of Ling Han's thoughts, they would have the urge to strangle him to death. He actually thought being able to make 10 times the profit in 5 days was too little? He had better be careful not to be struck by lightning when he stepped outside for having such aberrant thoughts. Ling Han nodded inwardly. He had earned little because the value of replenishing spirit pill itself wasn't high. If it was a level 10 godly pill or the highest grade level 20 godly pill, then one would know how much could be earned by refining a full furnace of it. He would still make 10 times the profit, but the earnings generated would be in the 100,000s to millions of true origin stones. There was no way about it, since he was still a small-time alchemist for now. "I'll take 1. A woman's voice rang out by Ling Han's ear. It was slightly cool, but still quite pleasant to the ears. Ling Han just had the last one left, and he handed it over to the other party. Both sides then completed the transaction. After that, he patted off the dust on his body, turned around, and made his way back. For the time being, he had no intention of spending more time on alchemy. He ought to quickly master and integrate the 6 types of cultivation techniques in order to charge towards the strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier as soon as possible. After that, he would break through to the Mountain River tier. If he couldn't reach the immortal level, he would remain an insignificant ant. He would still practice alchemy. He had to ensure consumption of 1 pill every day so as to enhance the strength of his spirit. The woman opened the pill bottle and took out 1 to consume. She instantly revealed an expression of surprise. It is actually 30% more effective than the average replenishing spirit pill. However, the replenishing spirit pill itself isn't a kind of high-grade godly pill. There aren't that many alchemists who would spend time to research and improve the original recipe. To actually be able to increase the effectiveness of the alchemical pill by 30%, this must have been refined using a special alchemy technique. Under the veil, her beautiful face revealed a shocked expression. If it was merely improving the original recipe, it would only bring about benefits for 1 type of alchemical pill, but if there appeared to be some kind of revolutionary alchemy technique, then it would benefit the entire field of alchemy. Fortunately, I have committed his scent to memory. She revealed a smug expression. Her name was Gu Lingyu, the final one of the 3 great beauties in the imperial capital. However, she had already enrolled into Scarlet Heaven Academy 2 years ago. She did not belong to any of the northern, southern, eastern, or western institutions, but rather the Alchemy Institution, which would only recruit alchemists.
She possessed an outstanding talent in the field of alchemy, which was related to her keen sense of smell. Having the ability to remember any kind of scent that she had caught a whiff of was an extremely incredible talent for an alchemist.
If he is that alchemist, perhaps we could exchange pointers on alchemy. Gu Lingyu immediately became excited.
With her charming nose sniffing all the way, she finally managed to track Ling Han, and arrived outside of the student quarters of the Northern Institution.
At first, she'd thought that Ling Han was merely passing by the area. However, she was surprised when she saw Ling Han entering the courtyard and not come out even after a long time. He was a cultivator, not an alchemist. She decided to wait, intending to first get to the bottom of Ling Han's background before doing anything. The Gu clan was also a prominent clan. It would be very easy for them to obtain information on a student's background. Ling Han didn't realize that he had become the target of a curious beauty. He once again immersed himself in study of cultivation, and pondered on integrating the 6 different cultivation techniques. However, after one whole night passed, he still had no clue. After all, this was pioneering work. 3 days later, he finally attended the class again.
As soon as he entered the classroom, he saw that the Luo brothers were crossing their hands over their chests and sneering at him.
He did not take this to heart.
Setting aside the Luo brothers' background, he could cripple this pair of brothers with one hand.
When it was time, Shui Yenyu also came. As her tender gaze swept over Ling Han, she couldn't help but smilingly say, "I did not expect to see Ling Han today. It makes me feel a little overwhelmed." This was naturally a sarcastic remark. She had only held 4 classes in total, and Ling Han had missed 2 of them. This was looking down on her too much.
Ling Han quickly said, "These days, I have been pondering the method of charging towards 13 stars of Shattering Void tier.
Later, I must consult teacher on this." When Shui Yenyu heard this, she finally nodded. If Ling Han really had been spending time in this area, she certainly would not blame him, and would even try her best to help, but if the other party was just using this as an excuse, then she would definitely reprimand him. Such an alluring woman giving a lecture on stage naturally made everyone unable to take their eyes off her.
The men were deeply intoxicated by her charm, while the ladies were mimicking her every move. How was she capable of exuding such attractive womanly charms?
She was pleasant without being beguiling, enchanting without being flirtatious. The day's class soon ended, and Ling Han went over to ask her about integrating the 6 cultivation techniques. Shui Yenyu could not help feeling shocked as she had never considered such a possibility. In the immortal realm, there were countless people with multiple spirit bases. As long as one consumed godly medicine, those without spirit base could even grow one out. Therefore, having 6 spirit bases was really a small matter. Furthermore, it wasn't uncommon to simultaneously cultivate 6 different techniques. The difficulty would be in integrating them. She had already gone through the stage of the Shattering Void tier, but this topic still sparked a deep interest in her. Ling Han had initiated the discussion whether this had any possibility of success, and if so, how to go about it. Drawing from analogy, Ling Han had benefited greatly, and could finally grasp a certain direction to follow, but whether he would be successful or not, or how long it would take for him to succeed, this would be an entirely different matter. Looking at the intimate interaction between the two, the men were all dying of jealousy. Humph! Using such methods to court a lady? It's not too bad an idea, but he targeted the wrong person. Shui Yenyu belongs exclusively to senior brother Zhao. Having the guts to court senior brother Zhao's woman, this brat is definitely seeking his own demise. Humph! Does he think that he is so great just because he is the #1 freshman? Come, let us go tell senior brother Zhao. When Ling Han felt inspired, he immediately left Shui Yenyu, and ran back all the way. Couldn't wait to try things out. Shui Yenyu couldn't help but smile.
This young man is really a cultivation fanatic.
However, since she knew that Ling Han had really been pondering cultivation techniques these days, she naturally wouldn't punish Ling Han. But then again, what she didn't know was that the other party had opened a small business as well, and was successful in refining the replenishing spirit pill. Otherwise, she would be extremely shocked. Just what kind of monstrous freak was he? Chapter 9-11. 6 Techniques Return to 1. Ling Han returned to his rooms, and began to practice his cultivation in seclusion, merging 6 techniques to charge towards the ultimate limit of the Shattering Void tier. He already had some ideas, and immediately began his studies, neglecting rest and food. Fortunately, nothing much would happen should a Shattering Void tier cultivator not eat and drink for a few days. Additionally, he was still young and filled with youthful vitality, so it was even more unlikely for him to grow weary. Another 4 days passed, and he had already attained some preliminary accomplishment. Yet, he had also caused the big fat cat to go into a mad frenzy. Didn't we have an agreement that you would treat me to meat? You've disappeared for another 4 days again. Are you making a fool out of me? Hence, the moment Ling Han appeared, the big fat cat immediately pounced over, brandishing its claws and baring its fangs threateningly. This cat demon, or rather tiger demonomata the angle, it looked to be an ordinary cat, was amazingly quick. Perhaps it could match Hu Niu in speed. As it waved its claws, even Ling Han could not escape. Fortunately, his skin was thick and tough, while the big fat cat was only venting its temper, and it did not really mean to injure him. Naturally, it was impossible that any damage would be caused. A fighting spirit also rose in Ling Han. He wanted to know exactly how powerful this fat cat was, and thus immediately began exchanging blows with the fat cat. The fat cat was very strong. In pure strength, it had reached the extent of 14 stars, and its battle prowess easily exceeded 20 stars. It really proved itself to be the remaining descendant of a divine beast, as Small Tower had said. If Ling Han controlled his strength so it was at the same level with the fat cat's, he would be overwhelmed by its extreme speed, and the claws found their target every time. However, if Ling Han raised his strength to 15 stars, then a terrifying strength would compress space in a single strike, and the fat cat would be unable to get near him. With a tremor of the air, it would be bounced away, which was very difficult to bear. Shattering Void tier. A single star's difference meant the difference between heaven and earth, and the higher one's battle prowess, the bigger this gap would be. Ling Han was sure that if he was to attack with full power, then there was no need for him to land a single strike. Merely the shock wave traveling through the air could possibly tear the fat cat into pieces. This filled him with even more anticipation for the strength worth 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. After taking out food and feeding this fat cat, Ling Han also had a meal, and had a good sleep. No matter when, sleep was the best mean to recover energy. It once again was the time for the class that was held every 5 days. Ling Han did not miss class, and seriously consulted Shui Yenyu during class. Although Shui Yenyu was not as good as he was in comprehension, she was still an elite of the mountain river tier, after all. She could stand on a higher level to look at a problem, and sort out some of Ling Han's inadequacies and limitations. At the same time, she was filled with endless praise for Ling Han. Encountering such an incredibly intelligent person filled her with a real inspiration to become a teacher, and not just treat it as part-time work like she was doing now. This stupid blockhead, he is obviously my man, and actually dares to seduce women. As Li Weiwei watched, she could not help but grip her little fists tightly. Moreover, the other party is big sister Shui. He is really aiming out of his league. Weiwei, you aren't jealous, are you? Ji Yuner asked, smiling. Li Weiwei instantly scoffed. She was indeed surprised by Ling Han's various displays, but she was the noble daughter of the left minister. Would she be so easily moved with how high her scope was? She crossed her arms over her chest and said, I am only afraid that big sister Shui would come to grief. Just look at that blockhead. His whole face is filled with lust, and he keeps looking at big sister Shui's breasts. Ji Yuner smiled in spite of herself. Ling Han's gaze was very clear. Moreover, though they could not hear what the two were talking about, it obviously had nothing to do with romance. No matter what, this time I will definitely mess with this blockhead till he's scared of me. Li Weiwei blinked her beautiful eyes, and the thought of a prank flashed in her mind. Weiwei, Ji Yuner quickly said. Now, the three of them were partners in a business, and though it could not be claimed to be prospering bountifully, as the various sales channels continued to be opened, their profits would also become quite significant. While this girl had no malicious intentions, it was best that she did not do anything inappropriate and take the joke too far. Big sister Yun, don't worry. I will only make him experience some embarrassment. It wouldn't be anything serious, so you don't have to worry about your little boyfriend. Li Weiwei shot her mouth off. You little girl. Ji Yuner pretended as if she was going to hit her, and Li Weiwei quickly defended. The two girls were soon messing around with each other, causing the people who were watching from the sidelines to feel envious. They very much wanted to join in as well. Jade arms twined around one another, and peaks were tall and erect. How alluring! Ling Han repeatedly experienced realization. As the saying went, 2 heads were better than 1. This round of discussion with her allowed him to profit much, and he felt that he had greatly improved on this path. Furthermore, Shui Yenyu discussed with him as well, saying that he should pass on his teachings and insights to the masses if he were to really succeed, bringing it to a great height of development. Of course, the academy would definitely reward Ling Han adequately. Ling Han did not mind. He could merge 6 cultivation techniques, but it did not mean others could. This was not something that could be done just by passing on his knowledge. Instead, it required comprehension, and if one's comprehension level was not enough, it would be pointless no matter what he said. However, if one's comprehension level was high enough, it would be able to open a new door for him and be of great help. After class was over, Ling Han began to cultivate again like crazy, paying no attention to outside matters. That was his personality. Previously, he would frequently study hard alone for about 2 to 3 months just for the sake of researching an alchemical pill completely. It was precisely because of this persistence that he managed to become the Alchemy Emperor. Now, he had also entered crazy mode on the path of cultivation. Another 3 days later, Ling Han finally attained a substantial breakthrough. He could simultaneously circulate 6 different cultivation techniques, then merge them together into one afterwards. However, the efficiency was lower, and his rate of daily improvement was extremely slow. Going by this rate, he might need 30 years to be able to reach the perfected condition of 20 stars of strength. This actually was not slow, but Ling Han wanted to seek out his dear ones, lovers, and friends as soon as he could. He also wanted to get rid of his status of a hostage as quickly as possible. However, he had just begun, and could still improve upon the cultivation techniques, so there was much room for improvement. Blockhead! Stupid blockhead! Li Weiwei came, and Ling Han just happened to have stopped cultivation. Hence, he stepped out of the Black Tower, and walked over to open the doors. What is it now? He questioned. Good news, good news. Li Weiwei tossed over a white-colored plaque. It was completely snow-white in color, looking both like and unlike jade. This is the entry plaque for the Black Jade Pool. You can enter tomorrow. However, you may only use it for 8 hours. After that time period, it would be harmful to the spirit and body. Furthermore, you have to leave before midnight. The day after tomorrow is the time for females to use the Black Jade Pool, and if you stay in the pool and not come out, then prepare to be struck dead at that moment. Oh, time has passed so quickly. Ling Han suddenly realized that it turned out it had already reached the beginning of the month, and it was the Northern Institution's turn to enter into the Black Jade Pool. Li Weiwei hid her cheeky grin, and was impatient to see how Ling Han would embarrass himself tomorrow. She was really looking forward to it. Remember, the Shattering Void Division only have a day's time, and if you missed out on tomorrow, you would have to wait until next month, she said once more. Ling Han was filled with suspicion and asked, When have you become so nice? Humph, I was so kind to deliver the entry plaque to you, and you're still not happy? Li Weiwei humphed. All right, thank you, Ling Han said, waving around the entry plaque in his hand. Li Weiwei quickly turned around and left. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, she would no longer be able to stop herself from laughing out loud. Chapter 9:12. If I said it is an accident, would you believe me? Ling Han had not imagined that Li Weiwei would trick him on this matter. Although he did feel that her expression was rather strange, this unruly young miss had always been quirky, so it was absolutely normal for her to have a variety of expressions. He continued to improve the 6 techniques returned to 1, and every step forward gave him joy. The skies had become very bright before noticing. Ling Han, not fully satisfied, very much wanted to continue his research, but when he recalled the fact that they only had a chance of entering the Black Jade Pool once a month, and missing out on this month would mean he had to wait until the next month, he stood up and exited through the doors. The location of the Black Jade Pool was no secret. It was located halfway up the mountain with the tallest peak in the academy. There was a terrifying great formation to seal it away, and only those that possessed the entry plaque could enter. All others would only be killed by the formation.
While this formation was only effective on all cultivators below the Sun-Moon tier, the Black Jade Pool was only effective for Mountain River tier and Shattering Void tier cultivators, so there was no need to use a formation that was more complicated. It would have been a waste. Also, if there were elites of the Sun-Moon tier or Heavenly Body tier that brought others in through a Spatial Spirit tool, then they would have to let it go. According to rumors, Spatial Spirit tools could only be forged by Genesis tier Ultimate elites, and were incredibly rare. Their value exceeded the value of the Black Jade Pool by who knew how many folds. Ling Han soon arrived at the foot of the mountain. If Li Weiwei was really going to trick him, then this entry plaque had to be false, and he would be attacked by the formation. No matter what, he would suffer some injuries. Unexpectedly, this entry plaque was real, and he advanced smoothly ahead. Strange. Had that young miss changed her personality? Ling Han held the entry plaque and climbed the mountain. With the protection of the formation, there was no need for guards here, so it was completely empty. In every batch of new students, there would only be a mere 3, this time 4, that could enter into this space. Added with the fact that there was no Shattering Void tier elite that had exceeded the age of 100 years old, the number of Shattering Void tier cultivators of the Northern Institution that could enter this place every time would only be about a dozen or so. Of course, there were also Mountain River tier cultivators, but Ling Han did not know if they were separated from the Shattering Void tier division. Ling Han had not asked about that. Ling Han had come very early. In any case, he had not seen any single person. It was either that others had not come yet, or they had already entered the pool, and were currently bathing. Halfway up the mountain, a dense mist bubbled and interwove to form a black-colored cloud. It seemed like fog, and yet was unlike fog. It had an exceptionally powerful effect of blocking divine sense and sight. Ling Han walked over, the sound of his steps light. When one reached the level he was at now, there was no need to deliberately suppress his steps as their every step and move would naturally be greatly different from an ordinary person's. Ahead of him appeared a pool of water. It really deserved the name Black Jade. The pool waters were as black as ink. Because it was calm and there were no ripples, it was like a piece of black jade. It was very soothing to the eyes, and made one feel reluctant to destroy this beauty. Although he was merely looking, Ling Han felt as if his spirit was being improved. He felt light and airy, and had an indescribable feeling of pleasure. Furthermore, all the pores on his body were also wide open as they absorbed the drifting energy that was spreading out. It was as if his cultivation level was also going to soar alongside it. Good. This was really something good. Ling Han removed his outer clothing, and after he was only left with a pair of underpants, he took one step inside. Wang, a wave instantly appeared on the pool waters, giving rise to multiple ripples. They appeared as if they were dancing, which made for an incredibly beautiful sight. The pool waters were not icy, but rather incredibly warm. Just one step in, and Ling Han felt like burying himself completely inside so that his whole body could bathe within. This was not only even more comfortable, but could also increase the effects of absorption. Voila! Just at this moment not far away, the pool waters were separated, and a person stood up. So there was someone here, and he had even submerged his whole body inside the pool. This place blocked divine sense, and the pool waters were as black as ink, so there was completely no way to see through the waters. Naturally, it was impossible they would be found out. It was obvious that the other party had also sensed someone else had come, because he felt the movement of the waters, and thus stood up, right? Hold on. Ling Han looked at the other party, and the other person looked at him. The two of them sank into a temporary silence. Fuck. Ling Han tossed out a curse in his head, and instantly understood that he had still fallen into Li Weiwei's trap. The person standing in front of him was a woman. While she was not fully bare, she only wore a thin shirt, which completely stuck tightly to her perfect figure, clearly defining every single detail of her body, every bit of it visible. In truth, this thin shirt was not an ordinary item, and even if it was completely wet, it did not let any light in. In other words, she had not revealed any important part of her body. However, this appearance that seemed to be on the edge of revealing and yet not was 100 times more alluring than actually showing everything. What detail could not be clearly seen? The astonishing peaks on the chest? Not only was their size unconcealable, even their shape was clearly seen. He could even clearly see the two small erect nubs. Her round erect hips, her slender waist, her long and slender thighs. What part was not a work of art, making one swallow their saliva just with a single look? It was enough to become a temptation that would make even a gentleman of the highest order transform into a vile wolf. There was no need to look at the face, as merely this figure was enough to drive anyone mad. Moreover, her looks matched her perfect figure as well. She was as flawless as white jade, her eyes sparkling like stars, and had a beautiful nose. She was stunning especially when her silken hair was dripping with water as the multiple droplets shone like pearls from the heavens. This was practically too seductive. One would feel like becoming a beast. Ling Han took a deep breath, and decided to take the initiative to break the silence. He said, "Senior Sister Shui, if I said this is an accident, I'm not sure if you would believe me?" This extreme beauty was precisely Shui Yanyu. Shui Yanyu did not make a sound. She bit slightly on her lips, raised her right hand, and a terrifying energy condensed. Hong, she struck out at Ling Han. Fuck, she was serious. This was a strike from a mountain river tier cultivator, so how was Ling Han supposed to block it? Don't talk about blocking, he did not even have the time to react. Pong! His forehead was struck with a palm strike, and he was instantly sent flying as the terrifying energy surged through. Between mountain river tier and shattering void tier, there was an endless distance. Even if Ling Han had developed his strength to the maximum of 20 stars, it was of no use. This was the difference between a mortal and an immortal, and there was absolutely no way to compensate for it. Ling Han bared his teeth. This palm strike had indeed caused him some pain. One had to know that he possessed a body of godly metal. If the minor levels of mountain river tier could cause him pain, then wouldn't the middle levels of mountain river tier be capable of inflicting a serious wound on him, and the higher levels capable of killing him? Small Tower nodded and said very irresponsibly, "That should be the case." Ling Han breathed out a sigh. His so-called physique was superior to his cultivation level by 1 level. However, in the immortal level, there needed to be an additional restriction. It was not the improvement of a major cultivation tier, but a minor cultivation level. His present physique was equivalent to the godly metal of a minor level of the mountain river tier. In the immortal realm, it was referred to as level 1 godly metal, and following this hierarchy, the maximum limit was level 20 godly metal. Still alive? Shui Yenyu's expression revealed a hint of surprise. The strike she had delivered previously was filled with her feelings of hatred and shame, and was definitely a full-power strike. Yet, she actually did not manage to strike dead a shattering void tier cultivator? This was practically unimaginable. Humph, I had initially thought you were a genius of martial arts. I never thought you were actually a despicable, shameless scoundrel. She pounced again, raised her palm and struck out at Ling Han. Pang! Unsurprisingly, Ling Han was once again sent flying. His whole body crashed into the mountain, and created a hole in the shape of the letter Big One. Thankfully, this was the immortal realm, so the space was incredibly firm. If it was in a small world, one strike and this whole mountain would definitely collapse completely, while Ling Han would have flown to some unknown corner at the ends of the world. Li Weiwei, just you wait. Chapter 9:13. Gave a bite. With some struggle, Ling Han walked out of the deep hole in the mountain. His physique was really too amazing. After suffering 2 consecutive blows from an elite in the minor levels of the mountain river tier, not even a bit of damage was dealt to him. Senior Sister Shui, listen to me X. Pang! Shui Yanyu was obviously driven into rage from her embarrassment. Although she had not revealed all, one could still claim that Ling Han had seen every part of her, so how could she not be furious? She had gone mad, and shot out like an arrow. Pang, pang, pang. She directed a series of attacks right at Ling Han's chest. Ling Han had just come out of the deep hole, and was immediately sent flying back, and furthermore, was still continuously sinking deeper and deeper within. No matter how sturdy the rocks and mountains of the immortal realm were, they could not stand up against the destruction done by an elite of the mountain river tier. More importantly, Ling Han's physique was on par with level 1 godly metal. Otherwise, with such a ferocious bout of blows, Ling Han would have been smashed to pulp, whereas the mountain would be completely unscathed. If the mountain had a consciousness, it would definitely sarcastically remark, "So it's my fault then? What wrong did I do?" Shui Yanyu fully exhibited the power of the mountain river tier, and Ling Han did not have any possibility of fighting back at all under her attacks. The mountain rocks endlessly caved in, and he was also continuously sunk inwards, forcibly opening up a new cave in the wall of the mountain.
The main culprit of this matter was naturally Li Weiwei. By this time, how could Ling Han still not understand? Today should be the day for the women to enter this place. As for why he managed to obtain an entry plaque. Very simple. Li Weiwei merely had to steal or borrow one. With who she was, it was definitely not difficult for her to accomplish that. But, senior sister Shui, you should at least listen to my explanation, all right? I am also a victim here, though I did indeed see a lot of things I should not have. You decided to murder me without a second word. That's not right, either. The more Shui Yenyu attacked, the more astonished she was. How could this pervert be so resistant against blows? Was this really a shattering void tier cultivator?
Although she was only in the early period of the minor levels of Mountain River tier, she was a 2-star genius, and her battle prowess was comparable to someone in the late period of the minor levels of the Mountain River tier. With such furious attacks from her, not just the late period of the minor levels of the Mountain River tier, even someone at the peak of the minor levels would definitely be unable to stand up against her blows. Yet Ling Han had withstood her attacks, and aside from a sullen, helpless expression, he practically could not be any better.
She had really gone mad. She had been completely looked over by another, and she actually could not do anything against the perpetrator. Heavenly Winged Divine Sword! She exclaimed softly. She had really lost her senses from fury, and actually even forgot to use her god tool.
Wang! A flash of bright light flew out from between her brows, and instantly transformed into a 3-foot blade. She held it in her hand, and quickly stabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han suddenly felt a chill. All hair on his body rose on ends. This sword possessed the ability to wound or even kill him. It was forged from level 2 godly metal at least. Ling Han forcibly dodged. Shua, the green blade slipped past his heart, but still stabbed into his body. The godly patterns glowed, and instantly dealt a considerable damage to his body. And this was because it had not pierced any of his vital parts, or he would have definitely lost his life. This time, Ling Han was angered as well. It's true I had looked you over fully, but you were wearing clothes at least, and strictly speaking, you didn't lose anything. Furthermore, even if I had committed a crime worthy of death, you should still at least give me a chance to defend myself, right? When Shui Yenyu saw her stab had taken effect, she immediately pulled back her sword, and stabbed it out towards Ling Han again. Ling Han could no longer bother, and lowering his head, slammed himself into her arms. If this was a wide space, Shui Yenyu would naturally be unafraid. A careless palm strike and she would be able to send Ling Han flying. Then she would pursue and run this pervert through with her blade. But this place was a mountain cave that been forcefully created with her blows, and was extremely narrow. Even turning around was slightly difficult, so where was there any space for her to deal with him? Furthermore, even though Shui Yenyu's cultivation level was higher, how many real battles had she really experienced? Just look at how Ling Han lowered his hand and pounced at her. Though his action was very simple, it was the most suitable move to make in this place and time. Furthermore, it was a reflexive action that had been taken when there was practically no time for consideration. It was actually born from his battle experience that he had accumulated over the course of 2 lifetimes. It was also an instinctive reflex for Shui Yenyu to stab out her sword. She had not thought that Ling Han would actually crash right into her arms. Where could she dodge in such a small space? Pang! This time, it was her turn to be rammed solidly by Ling Han. Her whole figure was pushed backwards a considerable distance. Fortunately, she managed to activate her origin power to defend in time. Otherwise, her physique would definitely suffer greatly from this collision. At the very least, her beautiful body would be rubbed against the sharp mountain rocks, and she would definitely suffer scratches and wounds. But this was not the most important thing. What caused a chill to run up her spine was that Ling Han had actually pounced into her arms. Furthermore, his face was buried into her breasts. This caused her to almost pass out. Damn pervert! Even though she was extremely beautiful and alluringly graceful, that was something that she had been born with, and it had absolutely no relation with her personality. Gritting her teeth, she forced the sword to withdraw, and stabbed out at Ling Han's back. This strike was extremely fast and heavy. If it landed solidly, not only would Ling Han be pierced through, even she herself would not be spared. This was her spirited side.
What a really spirited miss. With how sensitive Ling Han's divine sense was, he could feel that danger was just a bit away from his back, and a thought like this actually rose up in his head. At this moment, if he ducked into the Black Tower, he would naturally be safe, but Shui Yenyu would definitely be unable to stop the sword from its course, and this stab would cause herself to suffer tremendous injury. It was even possible that she would be directly killed. That was a treasured sword forged from level 2 godly metal at least, so its destructive abilities were definitely frightening. This was just a misunderstanding. The main culprit was Li Weiwei. If Shui Yenyu would die just because of this, Ling Han would definitely feel guilt. With this thought, he dismissed the thought of entering into the Black Tower. He opened his mouth and bit. Ah! Shui Yenyu only felt that her whole body exploded in that single instant. Her mind was completely blank, and there were no thoughts at all. Pa! The treasured sword in her hand fell weakly from her hand. It was really sharp. Just from the bit of kinetic energy from its drop made the tip of the sword pierce straight into the hard mountain rock, and it had sank down straight until only the hilt remained. Ling Han could not stop a muscle from twitching in his cheek. No wonder he'd felt that his physique was just moments away from being pierced through completely. So it turned out that the sharpness of this sword reached such a terrifying extent. However, could he keep biting her and not let go? Ling Han grimaced. While this had temporarily solved the crisis, he seemed to have pushed himself into an even more awkward situation because the place that he had bitten was precisely where her tall mountain peaks were. But if that had not been the case, how would he have been able to cause a great enough shock to her that she would even drop her sword? Shui Yenyu's distraction lasted only for a moment, and her beautiful face became ashen, her full head of black locks soared upwards, and her beautiful water-like eyes turned red. It was obvious she had entered into berserk mode. Not good. If she was really going to flip out, then she would definitely not give up until death. Ling Han did not hesitate any further, and he entered the Black Tower with a flash. He had wanted to duck into the Black Tower in the first place, but to save Shui Yenyu's life, he had delayed it a bit. Shui Yenyu was in a murderous rage. This bastard actually. She wanted to kill him. So what if there were academy rules? She wanted to commit murder. But where was her target? She could not figure it out. Obviously, she had been standing in the way that he would definitely pass, but where was Ling Han's figure? Da. Just at this moment, the sound of footsteps was heard from outside. Chapter 9:14. The truth is revealed. Very helpless. Shui Yenyu promptly turned around and walked out of the mountain cave. Big sister Shui, why are you here? Over a dozen women walked in from outside. They were all very beautiful, and the one in the lead was precisely Li Weiwei. While her cultivation level was not the highest rather, she could be considered the bottom of the pile. Her identity as the daughter of the left minister was too noble, so she had naturally become the central figure everyone revolved around. The Northern Institution held a student enrollment every 20 years, so there were naturally other shattering void tier cultivators. Additionally, Li Weiwei was not one of the top 3, yet could still enter this place, which obviously meant that the descendants of nobles and important officials had special privileges. Thus, it was not odd for over a dozen women to come here at this time. Shui Yenyu forcibly suppressed the killing intent in her heart, and forced out a smile as she asked, I, too, am a member of the Northern Institution, so isn't it absolutely normal for me to come here today? Li Weiwei nodded, and looked left and right before she asked, Big sister Shui, did you encounter some unexpected event? Instantly, a thought flashed in Shui Yenyu's mind, and she asked darkly, What do you mean? Nothing, haha, how could I mean anything? Li Weiwei quickly laughed insincerely. Shui Yenyu's brows wrinkled, and a powerful pressure suddenly exploded from her. She was an elite of the Mountain River tier, and on the level of life, she had completely suppressed all the shattering void tier cultivators here. Li Weiwei suddenly lowered her head and twiddled with her fingers. She indeed had something on her conscience. Thankfully, she didn't cause big trouble. That blockhead. He must have overslept and not come yet. Ji Yunar's expression shifted, and she exclaimed, Weiwei, you took my entry plaque away yesterday. Is there some relation to that? With how clever Shui Yenyu was, how would she still not understand? Immediately, her expression became severe, and she shouted, Weiwei, reply quickly. With such a scare from her, Li Weiwei could only honestly explain,
I only wanted to mess around with that blockhead, and so stole away Big Sister Yun's entry plaque and gave it to that guy.
Then, I told him to come here today.
I purposely invited so many people to come together to see him make a fool out of himself, but I never thought that that guy actually hasn't come yet. I'm really about to die from fury.
You die from fury?
Shui Yenyu really wanted to cry but had no tears. She was the one that should die from fury, all right?
She had really wrongly blamed Ling Han. He was not a pervert, but rather had been tricked by Li Weiwei.
But the problem was that it was a fact that she had been completely seen by him, and furthermore, she had even been bitten by that guy, and she hadn't managed to kill him.
What to do?
Should she kill Ling Han or Li Weiwei? One of them had been tricked, whereas the other was only playing a prank, yet had caused the current situation. Why would there be men's clothing here? Finally, someone found the clothes that Ling Han had taken off and put away on one side.
And there's a mountain cave here.
I remember there wasn't one here when I came here the last time, another girl uttered in surprise.
All the women turned their eyes towards Shui Yenyu.
I don't know either.
Shui Yenyu decided to deny it even if it killed her. This matter was only limited to herself and Ling Han. If a third person found out, how could she still have the face to live? Li Weiwei was filled with suspicion, and decided to look for Ling Han later. If Ling Han was still alive, it meant that he definitely had not come, but if he had disappeared from the face of the earth, then he should have been silenced by this big sister Shui. Her face was instantly filled with agony. She had only wanted to mess around with Ling Han by playing a prank on him. He would be a beautiful man entering the bath, whereas she would bring others around to be spectators, and they'd see how this blockhead would continue to act proud in front of her. But now it was great. If this guy had really been killed by Shui Yenyu because of this, she would definitely be filled with guilt for the rest of her life. Although the women were all curious and confused, time would not wait. They still undressed, with only their undergarments on, and entered the pool one by one. Shui Yenyu very quickly left. She had come early, so she would naturally leave early as well. In the eyes of the others, there was nothing odd about this. Still, they could not understand the reason behind the appearance of that pile of a man's clothing on the ground as well as the sudden emergence of the mountain cave. What exactly had happened here? Could it be that those had been left behind be the men that had come yesterday? Ling Han hid inside the Black Tower and could not help but sigh. Although he had temporarily escaped the conflict, and Shui Yenyu had finally found out that this was a misunderstanding, the problem was it was a fact that he had seen the beautiful scenery, and it was also a fact that he had had a taste of her peaks. Really, that beautiful scenery was really alluring, so much so that even recalling the scene made his blood boil and filled him with an urge to transform into a ravenous beast. So big, so round, so soft, and so bouncy, and it was a little sweet too. Ling Han reminisced, which could be considered to be finding joy in his sorrows. What I should face, I will have to face eventually. Let's see what happens when that moment comes. Ling Han simply chose not to think about it, and dispersed the sharp chi left inside his body by the divine sword using the powers of the Black Tower. The body of Diamond caused his physique to recover very quickly. Then, he began to cultivate his 6 techniques return to 1. Bit by bit he was improving. A day's time passed very quickly. Today, it was the turn for the men to enter into the pool for cultivation. Ling Han would naturally not waste this opportunity. He came out of the Black Tower, but saw that his clothes had disappeared from the banks of the pool. Thankfully, he had everything inside the Black Tower. He entered into the black jade pool, and began to extract the essence from the pool waters. The feeling was very wonderful. His physical body was strengthening, and his spirit was also becoming stronger. There was absolutely no need for him to exert any effort, and it seemed as if the heavens and earth itself was giving him a hand. It was indeed very valuable. Ling Han was instantly filled with an urge to dig up this pool and move it back to the Great Ling Empire, but he immediately gave a sigh. He should think about that only after he got rid of his status of a hostage. Power was might. Not long afterward, other students came. They were Ma Xing, Cheng Haofei, and also some he did not know. They were all known figures from the last batch and the batch before last. There were also some descendants of nobles that did not need to be ranked among the top to be able to obtain the special care of the academy. Of course, there were not many of the last category. In the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the top-tier forces were naturally the 9 kings,
whereas the left and right ministers and the 7 generals could only be considered second tier, and below them, there were still those third tier, fourth tier, all the way to ninth tier forces. The Academy's exception to the rule only applied to third tier forces and above, while fourth tier forces and below did not receive even a bit of special care from the Academy. For example, even though the Luo clan was very powerful, they were not qualified to enter into the third tier. Thus, the Luo brothers were not able to enter into the Black Jade Pool, and so Ling Han did not have to go through another argument.
After Ling Han stayed for 8 hours, he dressed and left.
"Blockhead, you're not dead yet."
He had just returned to his quarters when he saw Li Weiwei jump out in excitement.
Ling Han almost could not stop himself from rushing forward and beating her up, but when he thought that he could not implicate Shui Yenyu into this matter, he forcibly suppressed the urge.
Pretending to be confused, he said, "What do you mean dead? You really can't say anything nice, can you? Pei. I worried myself half to death because of you, and you're actually acting like this. What do you mean by it?"
Li Weiwei immediately exclaimed, hands on her hips.
"Worried about what?" Ling Han countered with his own question. Li Weiwei suddenly began mumbling. How could she have the nerve to say that she'd wanted to play a trick on Ling Han?
She humphed and said, "Nothing, you stupid blockhead. If you had died, you would have deserved it."
She left angrily. However, now that Ling Han was fine, her worries vanished as well. Still, she was in a bad mood. She had still not managed to mess with Ling Han this time round. This was too displeasing. Ling Han watched her leave, and thought that he would definitely find an excuse in future to give a well-deserved thrashing to this spoilt, unruly young miss. He had not died from her prank this time, but what about next time?
And the time after that?
Chapter 9:15. Senior Sister Xue's Request. Ling Han returned to his rooms, but merely sat for a short while before a knock sounded on the doors to his courtyard. He walked over, and peeked through the crack between the doors. Then, he could not help but feel a headache coming on.
Shui Yenyu.
His debt collector had come. What was he to do now?
Without waiting for him to decide what he was to do, Shui Yenyu directly somersaulted inside over the walls. Her beautiful face was filled with an air of violence as she looked icily at him.
Ling Han could not help but swallow. With a leap like that, her breasts were heaving heavily. It was really alluring. He really was not perverted, but because he had just had a taste of those beautiful breasts the day before, and clearly knew their size, he could not help but direct his eyes there.
"Senior Sister Shui, for you to barge into the residence of another like this, it isn't very proper, is it?" he asked weakly.
"Then the fact you peeked on the day the women entered the Black Jade Pool is something good?" Shui Yenyu forced out a counter through gritted teeth. 2 spots of bright color rose up on her beautiful cheeks, elegant as water, so much that one's heart would melt. Demon, she really was a demon. Ling Han missed Hunyo very much. If Hunyo was still here, she would definitely jump out now to stand guard in front of him right now, wouldn't she? But now, he would have to face this kind of temptation on his own.
Unfortunately, her power exceeded his not just by 100 times, so he did not even have the chance to force himself on her.
If he wanted to become a beast, he would only become worse than a beast. So sad.
"Senior Sister, this really is a misunderstanding,"
Ling Han said seriously.
"Even if it is a misunderstanding, would that change the fact that you peeked on me, and, Shui Yenyu uttered painedly. How pure and spotless she was, yet her breasts had actually been attacked by Ling Han. This was practically enough to fill her with the urge to commit suicide.
But even if she was going to commit suicide, she would kill Ling Han first. How could she allow him to live on free and easy?
Ling Han breathed a sigh and said, "I am a man, I shall bear the responsibility."
Shui Yenyu humphed. How do you plan to bear responsibility? You can't possibly think of marrying me, right? Then you would really still be dreaming.
Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Though I have neither authority nor influence now, and my power isn't all that strong either, but in less than 100 years, I will change all that. Senior Sister, you have no intention to marry me, and I have long since had my own beloved as well.
However, I can use another means to compensate you." Where had this guy gotten such confidence from?
With his talent, it was indeed not difficult for him to advance into the immortal level. But if he wanted to ascend, merely the 4 levels of the mountain river tier would take at least 1,000 years' time, and that was already the standard of a super genius. Any other person would have to spend several 100,000 years to accomplish that. In a mere 100 years, what can you do? Shui Yenyu waved her hand dismissively and said, "There is no need to be so troublesome. My request is very simple. In the time we are in the academy, you and I shall pretend to be husband and wife."
Pooh! Ling Han choked. Your thoughts are really too far off the wall, right? Just now you just said, in your dreams. And now, you actually propose that we pretend to be husband and wife. What the fuck?
Don't misunderstand.
I only want to make use of you to get rid of a person, Shui Yenyu explained.
She did not want Ling Han to misunderstand her.
Zhao Luan?
Ling Han was suddenly struck with a realization.
Shui Yenyu nodded.
This was her nightmare that had always been entangling her, and was impossible to get rid of. Ling Han snickered and said, "You have really given me a dilemma. Not only is senior brother Zhao in the higher levels of the mountain river tier, he is also the son of a great general.
Do you think I can stand against him?
Perhaps our matter will just have been announced, and my dead body would be found in the streets on the next day.
You have a spatial god tool. Would you die so easily?" Shui Yenyu questioned calmly.
Anxiety sprouted in Ling Han's heart immediately, but his expression was unchanged, and he asked, "What spatial god tool?" "You know very well yourself,"
Shui Yenyu said. "Do you agree or not?"
"If I don't?"
Ling Han probed. "I will kill you, then kill myself."
"In any case, I cannot bear constantly being pestered by Zhao Luan, so it would be just right to free me of my misery," Shui Yenyu said serenely.
It was obvious that the thought of suicide had not just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Abruptly, pity rose up in Ling Han's heart. Just how much did she despise Zhao Luan that it would cause a beauty like her to end her life just to absolve herself from him? He thought for a moment, then replied, "All right, I agree.
However, it is not because of your threat. Instead, it is because I feel that no matter how much you like someone, you should not use forceful means."
Shui Yenyu was surprised.
She looked meaningfully at Ling Han for a while, then nodded and said, "Thank you." It had been a deal at first, and she naturally had no need to thank him, but it was a different matter now.
"Oh right.
Zhao Luan is a well-known genius. Furthermore, he is the son of a great general.
Why do you hate him so much?" Even Ling Han would have a keen curiosity for gossip.
Shui Yenyu thought for a while, then answered, "This man plots a lot and has a dark personality. You would feel like you were sharing the lair of a poisonous snake when you were with him, and you would shiver in fear. Previously, someone spoke behind his back, and it just so happened that he was there. However, he merely smiled and said he did not mind, but on the second day, that person's whole family had been massacred completely." Ling Han could not help but shiver. So cruel? It was merely a few unpleasant words. So was there a need to do something so ruthless? However, that person had only said a few unpleasant words, and that was the consequence. He, meanwhile, was going to snatch prey from the tiger's mouth. He would have stolen his sweetheart, so what kind of vengeance would he suffer from?
"Afraid now?" Shui Yenyu smirked.
"A bit. After all, the Zhao clan has too much authority, and I am not able to stand against them at this moment."
Ling Han nodded.
This was nothing to be feel ashamed about. Even if the great General Zhao was only in the minor levels of the heavenly body tier, that surpassed him by how many cultivation levels again? However confident Ling Han was, he did not think 100 years would be enough for him to turn the tables and suppress the Zhao clan.
"Even if you're afraid, it is useless. You only have 2 options.
Either you die by my hand, or you die by Zhao Luan's hand," Shui Yenyu stated coldly. She was really indifferent. Ling Han showed a smile and said, "I won't die." There were so many responsibilities on his shoulders, so how could he die here?
"It would be best for you to be confident.
However, if you die, I will remain a widow for you for the rest of my life,"
Shui Yenyu declared serenely.
Ling Han could not help but feel gloomy, and exclaimed, "I'm not dead yet, all right? Additionally, since you have that kind of preparation, how about you stay tonight and serve in bed?"
Shwa!
A treasured sword was immediately held threateningly at Ling Han's neck. Shui Yenyu said coldly, "The reason I set up a false betrothal with you is because you're already a dead man.
You'll die for my sake, and I will remain a widow because of you. This is my debt to you, but if you want to disrespect me, that would be forcing me to kill you."
Ling Han raised his hands in surrender with a smile and said, "That was a joke. AI, though we are false lovers, we would still have to pretend to be intimate on the surface, or how would we make others believe us?" Shui Yenyu stared at him for a while before she finally withdrew her sword, and said, "In front of others, I will give you the respect you deserve, but don't think you can overstep your limits."
All right, all right, all right." Ling Han rubbed his neck. Thankfully, his skin was thick enough, or blood would definitely have spilled from the friction. Shui Yenyu felt like going crazy. He was obviously going to become an enemy of the Zhao clan immediately, so why did this guy not even have the slightest feeling of anxiety? To be honest, she had thought the whole night yesterday before she finally gritted her teeth and made this decision. The Zhao clan, what a colossal great force. The mere thought of them would cause one to suffocate. "From tomorrow onwards, you would be embroiled in this vortex," she said.
"Whatever,"
Ling Han said carelessly. Shui Yenyu suddenly felt her heart soften, and said, "I'll give you another 3 days. 3 days later, I will announce the news that we have made a private pledge to be married." Chapter 9:16. Here Comes Trouble. Shui Yenyu left swiftly. Ling Han stroked his chin.
"I got myself another wife again?"
It was a pity that he could only look but not touch. She was much too powerful. He smiled. Although Shui Yenyu possessed exquisite beauty and was a truly fascinating character, his emotion towards her was simply admiration. At the moment, he was completely engrossed in martial arts, and even if he were to be distracted, it would also be by alchemy. Where would he find time for romance? 3 days. It might just as well be like that they would simply spend the next 3 days leisurely before facing the storm head-on. However, such thoughts of Ling Han never came through. It was said that the Luo brothers had been waiting for Ling Han to sell alchemical pills again.
They naturally did not manage to catch him red-handed, which made the two brothers restless.
They eventually decided to lodge a complaint against Ling Han. They had a witness, after all, so Ling Han still wouldn't be able to escape. It was just that he had only sold alchemical pills that one time, and the quantity wasn't large, either. They reckoned that it would be difficult to finish Ling Han in one move. They approached an elder of the Luo clan based in the academy, Luo Kai Feng, and let him call upon a law enforcement elder, then charged up to Ling Han's residence. The appearance of the law enforcement elder naturally startled quite a number of students, and they trailed behind the 4 people, wanting to know who was going to be that unlucky student today. They were heading straight to the courtyard where Ling Han was residing. Bang! With a signal from Luo Kai Feng, Luo Ba and Luo Lai, the 2 brothers, each struck 1 foot out and directly kicked open the door. Ling Han, who just happened to be cultivating in the courtyard, opened his eyes and looked at the 2 brothers with a smile before saying, "Why, have you gathered enough true origin stones already and wish to fight me?" "You won't get the chance," Luo Ba retorted coldly.
"Ling Han, do you know your crime?"
Luo Kai Feng walked in, bearing a solemn expression on his face. He was an elite at the minor levels of the Sun-Moon tier, and presently had no intention of concealing his cultivation level. A sun and moon were displayed behind him. The sun had taken shape, but the moon was obviously incomplete. It was clear that his cultivation level was that of the late stage of minor levels. However, it was indeed terrifying when an elite of the Sun-Moon tier displayed his might. All the surrounding students not only felt suffocated, but also felt intense pain in their chests.
Ling Han stood up, slightly bowed to the 2 elders and said, "Greetings, elders."
Then he said, "I do not know what crime I have committed." "Still trying to play dumb?" Luo Kai Feng rebuked coldly. He took matters into his own hands, acting as if he was the law enforcement elder. "Let me ask you, did you sell a replenishing spirit pill at the United Forests Pharmacy last month?"
"Yes."
Ling Han nodded, and suddenly came to a realization. On that day, the man I had caught sight of was Luo Lai indeed. However, if he intended to use this matter to pin the blame on me, then he would have to be disappointed. Luo Kai Feng was stunned. He had thought that Ling Han would deny it, and didn't expect that this brat would actually admit it so bluntly. He couldn't help but sneer. "It is even better that you have admitted it yourself. Then, this would be proof of your crime. There's no need for even a trial." The law enforcement elder's name was Wei Qian-shu. He was somewhat dissatisfied with Luo Kai-feng, but since Ling Han admitted to selling the Academy's replenishing spirit pill, this was indeed clearly a violation of the Academy's rules. Being a law enforcement elder, he ought to impose the punishment accordingly. Ling Han, the Academy clearly stipulates that selling replenishing spirit pills bestowed upon you by the Academy to external parties is strictly prohibited. Do you have anything else to say? He asked.
When the surrounding students, who had all climbed onto the top of the courtyard wall, heard these words, they trembled with fear. It had turned out to be that.
Sheesh. How could this Ling Han be so stupid? He was clearly the #1 student among this year's new recruits, and had the potential of becoming a 4-star genius in the future, but he would actually risk it all for a mere few replenishing spirit pills. Rules were rules, so no matter how much of a genius Ling Han was, this time he would definitely be severely punished by the Academy.
Ling Han, you'd better kneel down.
Luo Lai sneered coldly.
He had been waiting to say these words for almost an entire month.
Ling Han cast a disdainful glance at Luo Lai and said, "Hold your horses. You are merely a student. What right do you have to be making a ruckus here? Have you no regard for the law enforcement elder?" H*T, he was doing it again. Luo Lai was so angry that his chest was trembling. This was the case before Ling Han had made use of the left minister to suppress him, saying that Luo Lai had no regard for the left minister. Now, he was acting like this once more. How could this lowlife from a small world have such a sly mouth?
He forced himself to calm down as he hollered at Ling Han.
You can't escape your fate today. What's the point of you putting up an act?" Presently, Ling Han was the one in a tight spot. He had no reason to be anxious. No need to get fired up. Luo Ba quickly squeezed his brother's shoulder before shooting Ling Han a cold gaze, and said, "Ling Han, since you have admitted to illegally selling alchemical pills of the Academy yourself, what do you have to say to save yourself?" Wei Qian-shu frowned, and appeared upset. "I am the law enforcement elder.
What right have you got to butt in on this matter in front of me?"
Yet Luo Kai-feng actually patted his shoulder, and smilingly said, "Brother Wei, I owe you a favor for this. Our Luo clan will definitely repay you in the future." Wei Qian-shu felt apprehensive. Being a lone cultivator himself, he was naturally no match for the Luo clan. Besides, Ling Han did violate the rules, and deserved to be punished. In that case, he might just as well allow the Luo brothers to bask in the limelight. It was no loss to him after all. With this in mind, he simply let Luo Kai-feng take the initiative, and regarded himself as an observer watching the show. Of course, Luo Kai-feng was happy to have it this way. The reason why he had brought Wei Qian-shu over was because there had to be a legitimate cause for his actions. The Academy had its own rules, and the enforcement of the rules had to be carried out by law enforcement elders. Ling Han smiled disdainfully, and said, "You guys really know nothing better than to simply accuse people. Since when did I say that I have sold alchemical pills of the Academy? Haha, do you think that we are 3-year-olds? You have just admitted that you did sell replenishing spirit pills to United Forests Pharmacy," Luo Ba said, pointing at Ling Han. "That is correct." Ling Han nodded again. However, selling replenishing spirit pills and illegally selling alchemical pills of the Academy are two different things. Also, stop pointing your finger at me. It is very rude, and will make me feel irritated. Luo Ba had gotten extremely confused with all the twisting of the words. Still pointing at Ling Han, he said, "You'd better stop going around in circles. No matter what, it won't change the fact that you have committed a crime." Pa! Ling Han directly slapped him across the face. What kind of strength did he possess? Luo Ba, being on the receiving end, practically couldn't react when his face was slapped. The hit directly caused him to lose 3 teeth as they flew out of his mouth. As the slap made its impact, the surroundings fell into silence. This was just too bold. It was already a serious offense to illegally sell alchemical pills of the Academy, yet he even dared to slap Luo Ba in front of an elder of the Luo clan now. He had to possess the guts of a true dragon, being as fearless as the gods. You. Luo Ba felt angry and humiliated at the same time. He was one of the 3 great elites of the younger generation in the imperial capital, yet he was actually slapped across the face in public. Even if Ling Han were to be decimated, would it rid him of the humiliation that he had suffered? "I've already told you not to point your finger at me. No need to thank me, As a senior brother disciple, I am obliged to teach you how to behave, Ling Han said softly, appearing extremely relaxed. I am going to kill you. Luo Ba pounced forward. He had to personally defeat Ling Han. Otherwise, he would never be able to hold his head high in this lifetime. Pa! Ling Han gave him another slap across the face, which directly sent him flying out of the area. You still want to fight with me when you didn't pay any money? Dream on. Puh! Everyone just burst out laughing. Chapter 9:17. The misunderstanding resolves itself. Luo Ba was pitiful indeed. Everyone felt rueful. Having received 2 slaps in public, it was like he had been nailed onto the pillar of shame. He would never be able to rid himself of the humiliation. However, this new first-place student was bold indeed. Not only were his comprehension of martial arts, the strength of his spirit, and combat skills superior to others, but he was also formidable in actual combat. However, Luo Kaifeng was just standing on one side. Was it really a good idea for you to embarrass the Luo clan like this? Sure enough, Luo Kaifeng's face was evidently dark now. He did not stop Luo Ba from attacking, because he had wanted the latter to personally regain his honor. Still, he had not expected the gap in cultivation level between Luo Ba and Ling Han to be so wide. As one of the top 3 elites of the imperial capital's younger generation, he was actually no match for a lowlife from a small world. Who would believe it? Since it was impossible for Luo Ba to rival Ling Han, Luo Kaifeng could only make a move himself. Otherwise, the Luo clan's reputation would really be tarnished beyond redemption. Humph! First, you illegally sold alchemical pills of the academy. Later you hurt your classmates. Such a person is not worthy to remain in the academy, he said in a low voice, with his terrifying spiritual pressure immediately directed towards Ling Han. Immortals cultivated the strength of the spirit. Furthermore, he was also an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. The strength of his spirit was many times more powerful than Ling Han's, so under such an impact, the latter suddenly felt a mountain of pressure coming down at him from the top of his head, seemingly about to crush his bones. Only by leaning forward was he able to withstand the pressure. However, Ling Han was well aware that the other party was purposely oppressing him, trying to make him bow or even kneel. Given his lofty and unyielding character, how could he allow himself to be humiliated? Ling Han stood upright, and the godly bones in his body cackled violently. He was fighting against Luo Kaifeng's spiritual pressure. A cultivator of the Sun-Moon tier was incredibly strong indeed. Even a mere imposing aura was enough to make Ling Han sweat profusely, while his eyes were bloodshot, and veins were all the more throbbing furiously. Strictly speaking, it would have been impossible for a cultivator of the Shattering Void tier to resist the spiritual pressure of another at the level of the Sun-Moon tier. The gap between these 2 levels was just too great. However, Ling Han was just too proud and stubborn could accept being defeated, or even killed, but he would never kneel down to another. The crowd had initially been indifferent, but soon expressed their amazement by and acceptance of Ling Han. This guy's willpower was truly quite impressive. The sounds of bones cracking were clearly transmitted from within Ling Han's body, while sweat was flowing from his forehead like a small stream, drenching his clothes wet. Yet, he stood proud and upright like the peak of a mountain. His spine not even the tiniest bit bent. Who wouldn't admire him? So you would rather die than plead guilty? Luo Kaifeng bellowed. He really had to make Ling Han miserable today. Only in this way could he make the others forget Luo Ba's disgrace of being slapped in the face twice. I did not commit any offense, so why should I plead guilty? Ling Han boldly retorted. Xiao, just at this moment, a figure flew over from a distant seat. Was a woman of peerless beauty, and appeared to be about 20 years old. She was the embodiment of a refined scholar. However, she currently has excitement written all over her face. Ling Han! Ling Han! She was already calling out to him from afar. Hey, isn't she Gu Lingyu? One of the 3 great beauties of the imperial capital? I heard that she was exceptionally talented in the field of alchemy. She had already been recruited under the Alchemy Institution quite some time ago. We have an alchemy institution in our academy? Haha, there are too few students in the Alchemy Institution. Moreover, each of the students there have always buried themselves in the study of alchemical pills. Indeed, not many people know about the existence of that institution. However, the Alchemy Institution has a special status, so everyone must give them face. Everyone nodded in agreement. Alchemists belong to a special group with superior status. Therefore, they couldn't be rashly offended.
Gu Lingyu ran into the courtyard, not even casting a glance at her surroundings, and directly said, "The replenishing spirit pill which you have concocted was 30% more effective than the common ones.
Is it that you have improved the recipe, or have you concocted it using a special alchemy technique? I have investigated your background. You came from a small world, and had just arrived in the imperial capital less than a month ago. It should not be possible to improve the recipe, so you must have a special alchemy technique, am I right?" She said so much in a single breath before abruptly stopping. She then looked at the other people with a somewhat blank expression, and asked, "Hey, do you guys have some issue here?" It was strangely crowded and lively here. Everyone was speechless, only now did you realize that something wasn't right here. However, Gu Lingyu had just revealed an amazing piece of information. Ling Han was able to concoct alchemical pills. Fuck. He was the one who concocted that replenishing spirit pill. It was no wonder that he had admitted to selling alchemical pills, but denied that he had illegally sold alchemical pills of the Academy. How could they not let him sell the alchemical pills that he had concocted himself? The Academy had no such rules. Luo Kaifeng was suddenly speechless.
Wei Qianshu even snorted heavily, giving the Luo brothers a stern look. They were making a false accusation, which would also be subject to punishment by the Academy.
Given these words of Gu Lingyu, what more could Luo Kaifeng say?
He could only blame the Luo brothers for not having investigated the basic facts before coming forward to make a malicious accusation against another person.
Now, how could this situation be salvaged? A broad smile flashed across Ling Han's face as he said, "Senior sister, I need to deal with some matters first. I will talk to you later." "What is it?" "I will help you." Gu Lingyu appeared to be filled with impatience. In her opinion, what matter could be more important than a discussion on alchemy? Ling Han responded with an "oh" before he further added, "These two accused me of stealing the Academy's replenishing spirit pill and then illegally selling it to outsiders." Gu Lingyu immediately became furious, and looked at the brothers with disdain. She said, "In the future, you shall not be allowed to consume any alchemical pills concocted by the Alchemy Institution." To actually make false accusation against an alchemist would obviously make the person an enemy of all alchemists. The Luo brothers became extremely depressed. No matter how highly they thought of Ling Han, how could they possibly think that a cultivator barely over 20 years old who had come from a small world could actually cultivate both martial arts and alchemy? This strike had really knocked them silly. Ling Han coughed and said, "Elder, since these two people have wrongly accused me, what should be done based on the Academy's rules?" Wei Qianshu couldn't help but feel awkward. Had it been another person, he would have acted impartially and imposed the appropriate punishment. What was required to be done would be executed accordingly. However, Luo Kaifeng was just beside him. He would need to consider the reputation of the Luo clan, right? But they were being observed in public. Could he openly show favor towards the Luo clan? Luo Kaifeng saw all this, and said hastily, "Luo Ba and Luo Lai also didn't do anything wrong. After all, they had really witnessed the sale of alchemical pills transacted by Ling Han. They were having the Academy's best interest in mind when they reported the matter to the Law Enforcement Committee. Right, so they could even earn merit based on a false accusation." Ling Han spoke up calmly. "If this elder is right, then wouldn't I have suffered in vain? Had this senior sister not come over and testified as my witness, wouldn't I already have been persecuted to death by this elder? To think that I have passed through 8 levels of the Academy's assessment, and have the potential of becoming a 4-star genius in the future. If I am hounded to death, then wouldn't it be a huge loss to the Academy?" Luo Kaifeng couldn't stop a muscle in his face from twitching. He had seen people who were thick-skinned, but it was the first time for him to meet someone like Ling Han. Yet, what the other party had said was indeed true. It was just that he was being too brazen about it. Wei Qianshu asked, "Then what do you want?" He decided to become the peacemaker between the two parties. Ling Han beamed and said, "If you give me some 8,000 to 10,000 true origin stones, then I will definitely forget this unpleasant event. Otherwise, I will fight to no end for the Academy to give me a proper justification." Chapter 9:18. Compensation for damage. Everyone couldn't help but admit that Ling Han indeed had a strong pride, and his pride was something to admire. To actually stand against an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. It was practically enough to make all of them kneel down in submission because of his courage. But with these words from Ling Han, he instantly made a muscle twitch in their cheeks. Aside from pride, you are still a little fucking shameless, aren't you? Would anyone really praise themselves like that? However, to actually dare to blackmail the Luo clan, merely that point alone would make all of them kneel down in submission for his boldness. Luo Kaifeng had a dark expression on his face. The Luo clan was a fourth-tier clan, possessing deep roots, and it was definitely not a big deal for them to hand out 10,000 true origin stones, which to anyone else would seem like an astronomical number. But whom did Ling Han think he was? He was merely a weak cultivator of the Shattering Void tier, and if even Shattering Void tier cultivators could extort the Luo clan out of such a large sum of money, wouldn't the Luo clan instantly bankrupt? Yet, the situation now was extremely unfavorable for the Luo clan. If money could deal with this impending disaster, they had to spend it. 8,000 to 10,000 is too much. Luo Kaifeng uttered darkly. You did not suffer any real injury. At most, we can offer you a compensation of 100 true origin stones. Hiss. A great many students had their mouths wide open in shock. Ling Han had really succeeded in his extortion attempt. That was the Luo clan, a fourth-tier clan. What kind of concept was a fourth-tier clan? Even the left and right ministers, and the 7 great generals, could only be considered second-tier clans, so wasn't a fourth-tier clan awesome enough? But now it was great. The majestic Luo clan actually bowed their heads in front of a Shattering Void tier cultivator from a small world. TSK, 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 what fun. Ling Han shook his head and said, how could that be fine? If it were not for the fact that senior sister Gu came just in time, I would have been long suppressed and turned into dust by this elder's presence. And that isn't considered real damage? 5,000 true origin stones. Even one less would not be accepted. In alchemy, Gu Lingyu was a genius, but in the area of human relations, she was obviously much too lacking. She immediately nodded and said, after bullying us alchemists, compensating with a few true origin stones would naturally be appropriate. This senior sister disciple was not too bad. She was very cooperative. Ling Han knew that it was impossible to turn the situation around to kill the Luo brothers. Thus, he simply decided to get some benefits. No matter what, he was not going to experience a loss. Luo Kaifeng practically wanted to commit murder. You were bullied? It was their Luo clan that was being bullied, all right? Luo Ba had suffered a slap like that, and now his face was completely swollen. So why didn't you mention anything about that? He naturally did not take Gu Lingyu to heart, but did not dare to overlook the alchemy institution standing behind her. Those people were traditional and pedantic, and had strange tempers. He humphed and said, 500 true origin stones. 4,000. 1,000. 3,000. 2,000. Deal. With a wave of Luo Kaifeng's hand, a great number of true origin stones scattered out. Ling Han was naturally not going to be reserved, and directly stored these precious stones into the Black Tower. Now he was only going to get some benefits, but when he was powerful enough, it would not be so easily settled. We're leaving. Luo Kaifeng shouted at the Luo brothers. These two pieces of trash, if it were not for them, what need would there be for him to swallow his anger in front of a cultivator merely in the Shattering Void tier? The Luo brothers did not dare say a word, and obediently followed him like children that had done something wrong as they left. On the wall, all the students scattered as well. They really had something they could boast about now. Wei Qianshu clicked his tongue in amazement. Gu Lingyu's prompt arrival had naturally solved a dilemma for Ling Han, but even if she had not arrived in time, Ling Han concocting an alchemical pill in public would actually also solve the issue. This kid was really capable of tolerance. It was obvious that he had long since been assured of victory, yet made use of this opportunity to give Luo Ba a thrashing first. Then, he proceeded to blackmail the Luo clan for a sizable sum, and the Luo clan could not even show their ire. His courage was astounding. To be honest, even Wei Qianshu himself dared not become enemies with the Luo clan. Apparently, not only did the Luo clan have 10 elites of the Sun Moon tier, their Grand Elder was even a super elite in the higher levels of the Sun Moon tier. Without advancing to the heavenly body tier, there were practically none that could match him. Who would be so outrageously bold to dare to take advantage of the situation and set a trap for the Luo clan?
Young man, behave yourself,
Wei Qianshu said, a hint of worry in his eyes. This time, Ling Han was indeed very pleased. Not only had he struck Luo Ba, he had even gotten a hold of a great number of true origin stones. However, would the Luo clan simply let the matter go like this? Thank you for your advice, Elder. I am well aware, Ling Han said respectfully. He naturally could differentiate between good intentions and false kindness. Wei Qianshu nodded, and left swiftly. Ling Han, tell me, have you improved the pill recipe, or is it that you have a unique alchemical concoction technique? Gu Lingyu's eyes shone brightly. She would forget everything when it was something that concerned alchemy. Ling Han smiled. I do indeed have a special alchemical concoction technique. Can you teach me? Gu Lingyu asked immediately.
Ling Han hesitated. This woman had really practiced alchemy so much that she had forgotten all about the ways of the world.
What alchemist would reveal to an outsider their alchemy techniques? Even among a master and a disciple, the master would still keep some part secret. Ling Han did not hide anything from his two alchemy disciples, though.
Still, this kind of technique was something that he had created on his own, and only he was capable of exhibiting the might of the three-fire guide to its maximum. Though you have done me a favor, you want to learn the three-fire guide just with that?
That was definitely impossible. However, Ling Han could tell that this woman was an absolute fanatic about alchemy.
It was not that she did not know the limits of decorum, but rather that her whole head was filled with alchemy, and she had completely no idea that some requests were too much to ask.
Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, then let's learn from one another. He could not possibly teach her the three-fire guide when they had just met, but since she was so fanatic about alchemy, he could have a discussion about alchemical techniques with her. Gu Lingyu naturally agreed gladly. The two of them discussed alchemy techniques. Gu Lingyu naturally benefited much from the reasoning behind the three-fire guide, and Ling Han was also inspired. After all, her achievements in alchemy were not inferior to his, so there was a considerable effect of complementing each other. In this way, Ling Han had also switched from his initial intention of giving a few tips to a discussion between two equals. Without their noticing it, the sky had darkened while they talked. The Luo clan residence. The Luo brothers were kneeling in the main hall. The patriarch of the Luo clan, Luo Hongdao, was seated in front of them, his expression dark. Do you know why I had you two punished? Luo Hongdao asked. Luo Ba said, we have brought embarrassment to the Luo clan. Luo Hongdao shook his head. That is only one part of it. More importantly, the way that the two of you handled this matter has disappointed me too much. You two actually did not understand the complete situation, and rushed to set up a trap.
From the beginning, the two of you had already lost.
Yes. The Luo brothers nodded firmly.
Even without the appearance of Gu Lingyu, Ling Han would still have the means to prove himself, though it would be slightly more troublesome.
If you are going to move, head straight for the fatal point. Do not allow the enemy any chance of freeing himself, Luo Hongdao uttered sinisterly. The Luo brothers nodded. Bar, do you have the confidence that you can defeat that lowlife? Luo Hongdao asked once more. Luo Ba very much wanted to act forceful for once, but after suffering 2 consecutive slaps from Ling Han, his confidence had also been slapped gone. But in front of Lord Patriarch, how could he admit his fear?
He quickly puffed out his chest and declared, yes.
His attitude was exhibited, but his tone was lacking in certainty.
Humph.
Luo Hongdao humphed in dissatisfaction again. What did I teach you just now? Hasn't one bit of it sunk inside your head? Putting aside the fact that you had already been horribly defeated by that lowlife previously, do you know the real origins of that lowlife? Real origins? The Luo brothers' expressions were blank. Ling Han was merely a lowlife that had ascended from a small world, so was there a need for them to understand his origins? Idiots! Luo Hongdao rebuked harshly. That lowlife is not so simple. He is the monarch of a country that had opened the sky. Pooh! Instantly, the Luo brothers choked out in shock. Chapter 919. Luo Clan's Plot. Opening the sky. How could that be possible?
In the history of our chaotic star's majestic empire, we have never had records of such a feat. Neither of the brothers dared to believe this. Luo Hongdao frowned slightly with displeasure, and said, "If it never happened before, does it mean it wouldn't happen?
Then what reason would the word miracle have for existing?
Moreover, there may be none who opened the sky before in our empire, but what about other places then?" The Luo brothers were dumbstruck. This was something they dared not even imagine. Long ago, more than 300,000 years ago, there was a great Su empire that ascended. The monarch of this nation had astounding talent. He had reached perfection level in the mountain river tier in a short few hundred years' time. Hiss, hearing such words from Luo Hongdao, the Luo brothers inhaled sharply. Finishing cultivation all the way up to the mountain river tier in a few hundred years was really too amazing. One had to know that even Zhao Luan, who was known as an absolute genius, was already over 500 years old at present, yet he was merely in the higher levels of the mountain river tier. Why are there no records of this great Su empire?
Luo Ba asked.
That is because this great Su empire was subordinate to a small royal empire, yet the monarch actually hid his identity and entered our empire. He even studied a few hundred years in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, Luo Hongdao explained.
Great Su empire?
Could it be that that person is the one who left behind the spiritual imprint in the third stage of the White Star Tower?
Su Ran?
Luo Ba suddenly came to a realization.
Correct.
Luo Hongdao nodded. But why were there practically no legends about him?
Luo Ba asked curiously.
Because this person actually snuck into the national treasury, intending to steal a great treasure of our empire. Thus, the Empress has placed a taboo and erased all records of his existence. However, the tool spirit of the White Star Tower is independent, and no one could suppress this person in a battle of the same cultivation level. Hence, that place has become the only place that still proves he once existed, Luo Hongdao revealed. Luo brothers hissed through their teeth. To actually dare enter into the national treasury and attempt to steal something. This person's courage was really massive to the point of being nature-defying. The reason I told you of this event is to let you know that you must 100% understand your opponent before you want to take them down. Otherwise, you would likely become the ones who would be taken down, Luo Hongdao said seriously. Lord Patriarch, we understand, the Luo brothers quickly answered respectfully. Bar, I shall ask you again. Do you have the confidence to battle with that lowlife? Luo Hongdao stared fixedly at Luo Ba, his eyes sharp. Luo Ba's heart clenched and he answered loudly. For the sake of the clan, this Luo Ba is willing to climb a mountain of blades or descend into a sea of flames.
Ha 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 ha. Luo Hongdao laughed loudly.
He abruptly slammed a hand on the table and exclaimed, "Good." He tossed out a red-colored stone and said, "This is a blood tear stone. In myths, a real divine beast was wounded, and as its blood and tears intermixed, it left behind an indestructible aura in this stone. Refine this, and your battle prowess will definitely charge up to 20 stars. At that time, you can have a duel to the death with that lowlife, and you definitely have to kill this person then." Luo Hongdao's expression was sinister. He had not taken to heart a mere sum of 2,000 true origin stones, but this lowlife from a small world actually dared extort the Luo clan.
Even he was truly enraged by this.
If it was not for the fact that the Scarlet Heaven Academy was there, he would even want to directly send someone to kill Ling Han. But now, he could only go in a large circle.
Meanwhile, Luo Ba was elated.
The blood tear stone definitely was an ultimate treasure for shattering void tier cultivators. With the boost of the aura of a divine beast, the power behind his every strike would increase by a good few times.
Furthermore, this was an eternal boost.
Naturally, though, the higher his cultivation level was, the smaller the effects this additional boost would have. Even so, his battle prowess would still be able to easily advance to 20 stars, and it would definitely be no problem for him to suppress Ling Han then. Luo Lai's expression was one of envy, meanwhile. He, too, was a genius of the Luo clan, but he was ranked below Luo Ba. Whatever benefits there were, it would be Luo Ba who would enjoy them first before his turn came. If there was not enough for two, then he would be left out completely. He, too, wanted the blood tear stone, but now, he could only kneel and grip his fists tightly whilst maintaining an expression of happiness, pretending that he was happy for Luo Ba's sake. For some unknown reason, He had a word on the tip of his tongue that he neglected to speak out loud. Shui Yenyu had once said before that the person who had opened the sky would be rewarded by the heavens and earth, and possess an additional 3 stars of strength. The requirement for opening the sky was 20 stars of battle prowess, and added with another 3 stars of strength, he would at least have 23 stars of battle prowess, right?
Even if Luo Ba refined this blood tier stone, he might still not be a match for Ling Han. But they actually wanted to duel to the death. The corners of Luo Lai's lips curved up in a cold smirk. For him, it was a good thing no matter which of the two died, wasn't it? Then what need was there for him to speak up unnecessarily?
He, too, was a man with ambition, and was definitely unwilling to forever remain in the second place.
Refine the blood tier stone, then immediately challenge that lowlife. This time, you must definitely not disappoint me. Luo Hongdao said, his expression solemn. I will definitely not disappoint your expectations, Lord Patriarch, Luo Ba declared excitedly. After refining this blood tier stone, he would definitely become the greatest elite in the Shattering Void tier, and whatever Ling Han, Ma Xing, and Cheng Haofei came, he would be able to suppress them all single-handedly. Then he would take advantage of his rising fame and propose marriage at the Ji clan. Ji Yuner, that be ***ch, was actually on such close terms with Ling Han. He was filled with resentment. When he got a hold of this woman in the future, he would definitely give her a well-deserved punishment. Gu Lingyu was definitely an alchemy fanatic. The moment she began talking about alchemy, she forgot everything else. Even when she had gotten weary from talking, she would uncaringly sprawl out on the bed and directly fall asleep, only leaving behind a request to continue the discussion after she woke up. This caused Ling Han not to know whether to laugh or cry. You really trust others too much, don't you? Although she was like a maniac when she was talking about alchemy, without any hint of womanly charm, just look at her exquisite beauty and her alluring figure. Besides, she was simply lying on the bed without keeping her guard up. Did she really think that everyone was a gentleman? Even for a gentleman, there were times when they couldn't control themselves. Ling Han shook his head, and allowed her to have his bedroom, whereas he himself entered into the Black Tower. There were still 2 days of his peaceful life left. On the second day, Gu Lingyu discussed alchemy with Ling Han again until he really could not bear her pestering and directly chased her out of his courtyard. Only then could his ears have a moment of blissful silence. Yet, he had just chased Gu Lingyu out when Li Weiwei and Ji Yuner arrived together.
Blockhead, my father wants to see you.
Li Weiwei had come to pass on a message. The left minister wanted to see him. Ling Han was slightly surprised.
Although he was proud of himself, he also understood that he would only be considered a nobody in the eyes of the left minister with his current abilities.
He would not even be qualified to get a second look from the latter. Yet not even a full month had passed, and he wanted to see him again. If someone heard this, they would even think that he was being highly favored. Li Weiwei had only come to inform him. With her personality of a spoilt young miss, she would naturally not be going back with Ling Han. After she had said what she came to say, she left. Ling Han dared not slight the summons, and immediately rushed towards the left minister's residence. His arrival was announced, and it was still Xiang Chengyun that had appeared and brought him to a small garden. The left minister was trimming a flower pot, his attention focused on it completely. Xiang Chengyun dared not make a sound to interrupt him, and stood somberly on one side, waiting. Ling Han watched, but suddenly, an expression of astonishment appeared on his face. Under the hands of Minister Li, this flower pot was actually exuding some kind of divine rhythm. Every branch seemed to be the movement a master of martial arts made as he extended his limbs, showing off an amazing technique. He could not help but compare it with the 6 techniques returned to one he was presently cultivating. All of a sudden, he came upon a great realization. Immediately, he sat down cross-legged, and the rhythm of great Tao spread out from inside his body. Being startled like that, the left minister abruptly let out a sound of surprise, and stopped his movements. Chapter 920. Beating. How dare you! Xiang Chengyun reprimanded immediately. Disturbing the left minister would cause all of them to be severely punished. Yet Ling Han turned a deaf ear to his rebuke. His complete focus was on the 6 techniques returned to one. Even if the other man's voice was as loud as thunder or shook the earth with its reverberation,
He would not know either. What more when Xiang Chengyun was only verbally reprimanding him like now?
The left minister only spread out his hand and stopped Xiang Chengyun though. An expression of surprise appeared on his face. This was a state of enlightenment. For cultivators, enlightenment could even be considered their utmost important fated opportunity. What was enlightenment?
A dilemma that you could not understand no matter how hard you thought about it during normal times would suddenly be resolved and understood. Or, in other words, you would gain some idea of the outline, or a hint, when it was possible that you might understand completely. The understanding belonged to the individual. There were indeed alchemical pills or divine fruits that could aid one in understanding something, but they would only provide aid. It was not a guarantee of success. The moment you went into enlightenment, there could be an improvement in your cultivation that had stagnated for 100,000 years. For example, in the case of the left minister, he currently was at the peak of the minor levels of the heavenly body tier, but without a special fated opportunity, it was possible that he would not be able to advance into the middle levels in this lifetime.
What he lacked was merely a sliver of enlightenment. Seeing Ling Han sink into a state of enlightenment, even the left minister could not help but feel a hint of jealousy.
If he could also experience enlightenment, perhaps he would be in the middle levels of the heavenly body tier 10 years or 100 years later.
Even if it looked like just a gap of a minor cultivation level, breaching this step was no less than crossing the distance from the ground to the clouds, and one's battle prowess would increase by at least 10-fold. He could not help but smile in spite of himself. He actually became jealous of a little cultivator in the shattering void tier. However, it was actually nothing good to enter enlightenment too early.
That was because the gods would definitely not favor one person too heavily, and always allow them to enter into enlightenment. Usually, even a genius would only encounter 1 or 2 chances of entering into enlightenment in his lifetime, and one with nature-defying good luck would have this kind of opportunity only 4 to 5 times at most. Hence, the higher the cultivation level when one experienced the time of enlightenment, the more valuable this chance naturally would be.
Xiang Chengyun could not help but look shocked and jealous. The Lord Left Minister actually waited on the sidelines for Ling Han to awaken? What kind of treatment was that? In the whole world, only one person would be qualified to have the Lord Left Minister wait. The Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Now, a mere shattering void tier cultivator would actually have that kind of special treatment, so how could Xiang Chengyun not feel shocked and jealous? This moment of enlightenment lasted for about 2 hours. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open, and he looked like he wished to continue. He had had great enough improvement on 6 techniques returned to 1, but he had awoken slightly too early from enlightenment, and had not reached the level of perfection. Once he came back to his senses, he realized that he had sat down cross-legged in enlightenment at a really inopportune time. He hurriedly stood, and saw that the left minister was presently looking smilingly at him, whereas Xiang Chengyun was wooden and expressionless, exuding an air of coldness that would make others keep a respectful distance. I suddenly had a flash of comprehension, and completely forgot everything else. I ask for Lord Left Minister's forgiveness for my disrespect, Ling Han said politely. It's all right. The Left Minister was still very magnanimous. How could one who could ascend to as high a position as he, and cultivate to this kind of high cultivation level, be anyone ordinary? He cast a look at Xiang Chengyun and said, "Chengyun, leave us first." Xiang Chengyun was initially stunned. Then, he practically could not believe his ears. Lord Left Minister actually had something that he was going to keep hidden from him. Moreover, he wanted to speak privately with Ling Han. Xiang Chengyun was already jealous of Ling Han, but now his jealousy naturally reached its peak. But no matter how arrogant he acted due to the Left Minister's favor, he did not dare disobey the Left Minister's words. He merely said a word of assent, then turned and left. But the instant his eyes swept over Ling Han, an incredibly cold chill appeared in his gaze. Ling Han could not help but feel baffled. He had offended him just like that. After Xiang Chengyun had left, the Left Minister picked up the shears once more and began trimming the flower pot. He did not speak, so Ling Han would naturally not take the initiative to ask. He stood on one side, hands at his sides. After a good while, the Left Minister finally put down the shears, and asked casually, "Wei Wei has been helping you do business recently?" These words could either be taken seriously or lightly. If they were to be taken lightly, the issue would be settled with a smile. But if they were to be taken seriously, "You actually had the daughter of the Left Minister do errands for you, Who did you think you were? Ling Han paused for a moment, then answered. Indeed, I have been doing some business with the fourth young miss and Miss G. The two young misses are only interested because of its novelty, and think that it's fun. The left minister laughed, and said, looking at the energy that girl is brimming with, it does not seem just like playing around. Instead, she seems to be very enthusiastic. No matter what the fourth young miss does, she has always been serious. Ling Han offered a word of compliment. The left minister could not help but laugh loudly.
He certainly knew that these words of Ling Han were not to be believed, but the daughter he doted on the most was this youngest daughter of his, so hearing these words naturally made him greatly pleased.
He nodded and said, it's rare that this girl would focus on doing something. I feel very gratified. Ling Han released a breath of relief internally. This matter was now over and done with. The left minister would not look into his fault for making use of Li Weiwei. He was obviously letting Li Weiwei become rich with him. So why did the situation now seem like it was Li Weiwei that was doing him a favor? From this, it could see how skilled Ling Han was in handling matters.
If it was anyone else, he would definitely be in fear and trepidation, and prostrate himself in front of Li Weiwei in utter gratitude.
The left minister once again picked up the shears. As he trimmed, he said carelessly, Weiwei has just about reached the age suitable for marriage. However, I am very worried, and fear that she would be fooled due to her young age.
Ling Han could not help his heart throbbing loudly.
Although the left minister had not clearly pointed fingers, he was obviously talking about him. It looked like the fact that he had been too close with Li Weiwei these days caused the left minister to feel displeased. No matter how monstrous the talent that Ling Han showed was, his current cultivation level was really too low. So how could he be a suitable match for the princess of the left minister's residence? Even if there was just a sliver of a chance, the left minister wanted to nip it in the bud.
One that can be a suitable match for fourth young miss would have to be one of the noble young masters of the 7 generals at the very least, Ling Han said.
This could be considered his expressing his stand on this matter. The left minister was very pleased. This person from a small world was very clever. He merely needed a little hint, and would understand everything. He paused for a while, then said, every 10 years, the 3 great majestic empires would carry out a competition. There are 2 rounds for the Shattering Void tier and Mountain River tier, respectively. This year, the competition for the Shattering Void tier would be conducted. Every empire would send out 10 people, who would take turns to defend their position. The first one to have all 10 defeated would be placed last, whereas the one that can last until the end would be ranked first.
He looked at Ling Han and said, you will battle on behalf of the left minister's residence. Fuck, it was obvious he was being asked to work here. So why did the left minister still look like it was Ling Han who had been done a favor?
However, he presently had also been labeled with the sign of the left minister's residence.
Then, if the left minister wanted him to do something, how could it be that it was necessary to still ask his opinion?
He was a mere Shattering Void tier cultivator. Yes, Ling Han nodded. However, this matter involves the pride of a whole empire. Even if I nominate you, you may not get through. The left minister then said, hence, you have to defeat all other competitors to obtain the honor of representing the empire in battle. Yes, Ling Han said, but he thought, if I could help the Chaotic Star's majestic empire get first place, would I get some kind of reward?
Since the left minister had mentioned that this matter concerned the pride of a whole empire, then the rewards given for attaining the first place shouldn't be too unpresentable, right?
With such thoughts, Ling Han found his motivation. You may leave. The left minister waved him away. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.